from Wisconsin across the Civic Media Radio Network, you are listening to Mornings with Pat Kreitlow. Sitting in for Pat Kreitlow, we have Matt Rothschild and Angela Lang.
Good morning and welcome to Mornings with Pat Kreitlow. As Greg said, I'm not Pat Kreitlow, I'm Matt Rothschild. Angela and I have been with you the last few mornings, and this is our last morning of the week, but it's been a lot of fun. Angela, how are you doing this morning?
Good. It feels a little bittersweet to have our last show. It's been such a fun week, and I'm super grateful for all the listeners and especially for Pat for trusting us with this show for the last 4 days. It's been a good time.
Absolutely. Now, you were saying before we came on air that there's a lot of fog in the Milwaukee area. Do you want to alert our listeners?
Yeah, it's real hard to see. It's hard to even see down your block. So, as folks know, and we talked with Brittany yesterday, there is a storm moving in, and it's been foggy and weird the last few days. There's a dense fog advisory, I believe, in Milwaukee until about 10 a.m. So hopefully things will kind of lighten up a little bit after that once the sun comes up. But yeah, be careful on your way in. Make sure you are taking your time, especially our Madison folks on the Beltline. We know that there's always something, right? And if you're on the freeways and whatnot, just slow down, take your time, and make sure you have your lights on.
There is always something. I'm driving in on Rimrock Road, just south of the Beltline, and the person in front of me was so far off the lane, almost hitting one mailbox after another. I finally had to honk my horn. I'm sure the person was texting or drunk, one or the other. And it was just amazing. You know, it's 5:30 in the morning to be that out of it.
Yeah, seriously.
I had to keep my distance. I'd wanted to pass, but there wasn't a good place to pass. But yeah, it's crazy out there driving for sure.
Yeah.
The fog in Madison is not as bad as it was yesterday. There was some fog in low-lying, marshy kind of areas, but other than that, it was pretty clear driving, except for the crazy drivers, of course.
Yeah,
And then there's always.
But we're better than Illinois drivers, and I will always stand on that.
Yeah, definitely true. When I take 90, once you get past Janesville and in Beloit, and you get into Illinois, and then they're going,
Wild.
95.
Yeah,
it's just
wow, okay,
weaving around at crazy speeds. Yeah, it's nuts out there. Listen, I wanted to. We've started most of the mornings with the Judge Dugan story in Milwaukee. Of course, the judge who's been arrested by the Trump federal authorities for allegedly not cooperating when they were trying to apprehend an undocumented person in her courtroom, raises all sorts of legal issues. I see that her attorneys have filed a motion to dismiss the case on two grounds. One is on judicial immunity, and the other is on the 10th Amendment. The 10th Amendment says the power is not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states or reserved to the states, respectively, or to the people. This is an amendment that doesn't get talked about a lot. It used to be a favorite of the right wing because they wanted more states' rights, which was a code word for not following civil rights, federal civil rights. But here, her lawyers are bringing it in as an argument to throw it out. It's interesting. Her arraignment is this morning. I guarantee you she's going to enter a plea of not guilty. And she also has this kind of dream team of lawyers, which
it's interesting, right?
Yeah, I mean, she has the former U.S. Solicitor General Paul Clements. This was the chief lawyer for one of the Bush's Justice Department. This is the guy who was in the U.S. Supreme Court arguing more cases than any other lawyer, during that administration. So he's got tremendous experience. There's a former U.S. attorney from Wisconsin, Stephen Biskupik, who also has been, appearing in court a lot. And, he's going against right now a current U.S. attorney in the Eastern District of Wisconsin. So that's kind of funny. And then there's Dean Strang, who's a lawyer I know. He represented Stephen Avery in that documentary, Making a Murderer. And he's also written about a couple books. One was, I think, about the trial in Chicago of the anarchists back in the late 19th century. Really interesting guy, Dean Strang, great lawyer. So anyway, I think the lawyers that Judge Dugan has, they're going to help her a lot. The other thing that I think is going in her favor is the judge. She's got Judge Lynn Edelman,
Mm-hmm.
who's an 85-year-old liberal Democrat, was a legislator, um, is a tremendous guy. He's written articles for law journals on how bad our campaign finance system is and how the Walker administration made it a lot worse. So I got a warm spot in my heart for Judge Edelman, and I also think that's a good sign for Judge Dugan, at least at the trial level. It's hard for me to believe that with those great lawyers on her team and with this decent judge that she's going to get convicted, but who knows? You never know.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I saw when I saw that she had like her legal team, 'cause, people have reported about it. I definitely thought it was a good move to have some. It was either one or two former Bush kind of appointees, because I think that also sends a message, right? That there's kind of like this bipartisan. It's not like a political thing necessarily. It's just more legality. So I think that's a good move. Again, all of these things that we've been talking about, her team that she has, and the things that she's said and done or not done. This should be thrown out, but we are not living in normal times. So very curious to see how today plays out.
And yesterday you mentioned that there's that some of her supporters are gathering at the courthouse this morning. Do you know what time that's happening?
Yeah, I believe it's early. I believe some folks are gathering maybe around 7:30 or so. But folks, have been making appearances at the courthouse. Even the day that the news broke, I was in some group chats and people were like, "We're going to the courthouse." So people were mobilizing, and I think this is the opportunity for folks again to show their support. And I think people feel strongly about this. Folks that maybe don't go to regular protests and rallies are showing up for this, because I think they see kind of like the gross mischaracterization of her and her actions. And people know Judge Dugan. She's relatively quiet, keeps to herself, sends out emails for things that are like Happy Constitution Day, right? She's not really in the political mix. And so I think a lot of people feel for her, and I think there's going to be a lot of folks that are showing up at the courthouse today.
Yeah, so I want to encourage anyone who's in Milwaukee who's got
Yeah.
a little bit of free time in the next hour to hustle down to the courthouse and show support for the judge who is being made an example of by the Trump administration. Let's make no mistake about it. I mean, this was an effort to intimidate the judicial branch of our government and to tell anyone who wanted to stand in their way in any possible way just to step back and quiet down and
Yeah.
don't get in their way. And similarly with the brushback pitch that they threw at Governor Evers' head, that is Secretary of Homeland Security Holman, who said, just wait till you see what's coming next, when all Governor Evers did was tell all state employees that if ICE comes knocking on your door, call one of our attorneys first before you give them anything, which is just pretty standard advice.
Pretty basic. Yeah, he wasn't saying, "Hey, go sneak people downstairs in a personal tunnel." He was not saying that. I think, a lot of times, and we've seen this play out in the federal government, when DOJ tries to come in and say, "Give me all of your data," or what have you, their guidance is do not, and call your lawyer. I think that's the same guidance we give, citizens as well. Do not talk to the cops, call a lawyer, right? It's the same thing. So it was really interesting to see such like a strong response to Governor Evers. And it just, I think to me, just sent a signal that this is all for theatrics. They're trying to make a point, and they're trying to have a chilling effect of getting people to comply. And I think they know that the legal community is, I don't want to say carrying of this work, right? Everyone has a role to play. But I think folks have seen that there is a strong legal opposition to the Trump administration. So it makes sense that he started targeting, judges, lawyers, etc.
All part of an attack on civil society, and that's what authoritarians do. They go after the legislative branch, they go after the judicial branch, they go after universities, they go after lawyers, and they'll go after labor unions. They're gonna go after everybody who might try to resist. And of course, we all need to resist here before they accumulate more power and start exercising more of it, which is what I'm scared of course. And this has been a theme over the last couple of days for you and me, Angela, when we come on, is just the fate of our democracy. How are we going to survive it? And I keep thinking back to the scholars of fascism, those folks who are thinking of leaving the country. There was that op-ed in the New York Times yesterday, a video op-ed of three scholars, including Timothy Snyder and Stanley from Yale and Shore from Yale, who are all going to Toronto now. And then yesterday I saw a quote about Trump and his corruption. This ridiculous $400 million plane from Qatar that he wants to have donated to the army and then his presidential library. And I saw Ruth Ben-Ghiat she's a scholar of fascism at NYU. She wrote the book Strong Men. She's been really great on this, and she's got a Substack called Lucid. And this is what she wrote about corruption. I'm just going to read 2 paragraphs of it because it just caught my attention. Corruption is a key to authoritarianism because for strongmen, public office has nothing to do with public service. Ooh, that's kind of a startling statement, isn't it? It is rather a vehicle for private enrichment as well as escaping prosecution for crimes. Authoritarians use corruption in tandem with violence, propaganda, and other tools. Purges of the judiciary, which is what we've been talking about, result in a justice system that exonerates crooks or doesn't prosecute them at all. Journalists and activists who might expose thievery are imprisoned or smeared through propaganda. Virility makes taking what you want and getting away with it into the measure of manhood. This is I'm interjecting, the hyper-masculinity that is a part of Trump. We saw it at the convention. We see it all the time. It's a feature of fascism. Continuing with Ruth Ben-Ghiat, authoritarians also create new patronage systems that offer jobs and opportunities for wealth, which help to overcome any moral hesitation some might have about collaborating. That's all the IT billionaires that are on board. The core of the contract between the ruler and his enablers, she concludes, is the offer of power and economic gain in exchange for supporting his violent actions in his suppression of civil rights. That's Ruth Ben-Ghiat at NYU in the Substack called Lucid, which I highly recommend to any listener.
That's a doozy of a quote. It sounds, that's exactly what's happening right now. And I think what's interesting is to talk about how they're not doing these policies just because they're this part of their agenda. Absolutely. But they, as you said, Matt, they're trying to set up structures and institutions to maintain and gain more power. And I think that part is being lost because this is more of a long-term thing of how they acquire power versus, we're just doing policies that we think are the best for the American people. And people are, I don't want to say distracted, people are trying to respond to the immediate threats that maybe don't see the broader threat of all of these things lead up to him acquiring more power.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. That's Angela Lang. She's my co-host. I'm Matt Rothschild. We're sitting in here on Mornings with Pat Kreitlow. We'll be right back to talk about 2 Wisconsin Congress people who stood up yesterday to RFK Jr. You're listening to Mornings with Pat Kreitlow all across the Civic Media Radio Network, 855-752-4842. We'll be right back.
Okay.
Yeah. On my little screen, it says the host has enabled local recordings, and I can't. The reason my head is tilted on the video is I can't get that image off of my little screen. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about.
I don't know what you're talking. There's no button you can click to just exit out of that screen, that little window.
I can't get my little tracer to get onto that screen. Weird.
You might have to call Luke or Sam over to help you with that. I don't know what that one is. Do you just want to talk about this topic for this segment?
Yeah, because we had a Pastor Lanier is coming at 6:30, right?
Right.
Okay, because so I would say pick one or the other clips just because the combined total is nearly 4 minutes, and that's half of the entire segment.
Let's do Pocan's clip, and then I'll, like I said when I was texting you, Greg, I can just bring up Baldwin stuff.
Okay. All right. Cool. All
or
right.
we can do just a little bit of Tammy, just to give
Either
a
or, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. Just I'll call it up. We got 1 minute left. No, we got a little more than 1 minute left. My screen will be off. But you can just call for it. I'm listening. I'll turn it on. So we're good to go, and we're all set. We have 40. I don't know how time works. 50 seconds. Good Lord.
Yeah, I think we should just run them together and cut Tammy off short. So then
Yeah.
Just give me just be like, all right, we're good there, or give me a signal and I'll cut it off.
All right, sounds good.
All right. $20 seconds.
Hey, welcome back to Mornings with Pat Kreitlow. Pat's on vacation again today, and I'm Matt Rothschild. I'm still with you this morning, as I was yesterday morning, and so is Angela Lang. We've been co-hosting all week, and I hope you've been enjoying it. We've certainly been enjoying the opportunity and the luxury of being with you. You can join the show by calling or texting 855-752-4842. That's 855-75-CIVIC, all across the Civic Media Radio Network. Now, as I mentioned right before the break, we had some excellent representation here in Wisconsin on Capitol Hill yesterday, as Representative Mark Pocan and Senator Tammy Baldwin kind of scuffed up RFK Jr. We're going to listen to a little audio of both. Let's start with Mark Pocan.
If you had a child today, would you vaccinate that child for measles?
For measles, probably for measles. What I would say is my opinions about vaccines are irrelevant. I have directed Jay Bhattacharya.
Sure. No, like I said, I don't want to.
So that everybody can make that decision. But I don't want to seem like I'm being evasive.
Yeah.
You are being evasive.
I don't think people should be taking medical advice from me.
Right. No, I got that. And I'm not asking you to give them medical advice, but would you vaccinate your child for measles?
If I answer that question directly, that it will seem like I'm giving advice to other people, and I don't want to be doing that. I want people to make.
But that's kind of your jurisdiction because CDC does give advice, right? I'm not trying to do it as a gotcha. It's just
what I think what we're going to try to do is to lay out the pros and cons, the risks and benefits accurately as we understand them.
Okay.
With replicable studies.
Can you talk about chickenpox? Would you vaccinate your child against chickenpox?
I don't want to give advice. I can tell you in Europe, they don't use the chickenpox vaccine specifically because the preclinical trial shows that when you inoculate the population for chickenpox, you get shingles in older people, which is more dangerous.
Just one last one, just a yes or no, please, if we could. Polio?
Again, I don't want to be giving advice.
That's fair. No, that's fair. Like I said, I was not doing it as a gotcha. I was I thought it could be helpful if. Okay.
There was Mark Pocan being Wisconsin nice, but really putting RFK Jr. in a box. And
basic, simple questions.
I really enjoyed it, actually. Let's listen to Tammy, who was tougher than usual, and I appreciate that about her.
Secretary Kennedy, I want to start with what I hope is an easy question for you. Do you think lead poisoning in children is a significant concern?
Is lead poisoning
in children a significant concern?
It's a extremely significant concern.
Thank you. Then I would like to know why your department has effectively shut down the very program to address lead poisoning in children. The city of Milwaukee requested assistance from the CDC to help the city respond to lead poisoning cases tied to public schools. 6 schools have been closed, displacing more than 1,800 school children. The request for federal assistance was denied because of lack of staff. The entire childhood lead poisoning branch has been fired. In the words of a Milwaukee mom, it really sends a message of, you don't matter.
Go, Tammy.
I don't know what you would say to parents who must now test their children for lead and deal with school closures. But do you intend to eliminate this branch at CDC, yes or no?
No, we do not.
Okay. Because you cannot tell us that you want to make America healthy again when you are willfully destroying programs that keep children safe and healthy from lead poisoning. Congress dedicated $51 million in funding for this particular program. But when a community asks for help to prevent lifelong complications for children, and there is no one there to pick up the phone, and it's not because this program is ineffective, it's because you fired the entire team whose job it is to support communities like Milwaukee.
I think that's good.
If that,
Whew.
Yeah, Tammy, really bringing it home. That was great representation by our U.S. Senator Tammy Baldwin. Not Ron Johnson, mind you. That was Tammy Baldwin. And she, that is someone who is recognizing what's going on in her state, representing her constituents who are being harmed terribly by the decisions of the Trump administration, by the decisions of RFK Jr. himself, and really putting it to him. And it was so refreshing to hear both Tammy Baldwin and Mark Pocan just lay it out and put RFK Jr. on the spot. We need to be putting all these Trump officials on the spot. Yeah. But it was great to see our own elected officials doing it. Didn't you think, Angela?
Yeah, Senator Baldwin was on MSNBC last night, kind of reiterating some of the same points that we just played. And it particularly struck me because, again, as a proud product of Milwaukee Public Schools and a lifelong Milwaukeean, there's jokes of like, if you lived in Milwaukee enough and you drank the tap water, you probably got some sort of lead in you, right? Because it's become so normalized. And so to hear someone like Senator Baldwin really listen to, the mothers and parents and families of what's happening in MPS and these school closures, and then to be able to amplify it and call the question to the man's face is something that we need more of. And that's why I felt strongly to play that part, because I think there's a lot of MPS parents that are concerned, don't think people are responding adequately. And yes, Dems are in the minority, but this is how you use your platform. This is how, when you have an audience, to try and hold someone accountable. So I'm very proud of our representatives. And if they're listening by chance, good job. Keep it up. More of this, please.
Yeah, that's accountability, the kind of accountability we need. And I want to encourage listeners to call Tammy Baldwin, Mark Pocan's office, and thank them for what they did. The number is 202-225-3121. That's area code 202-225-3121. That's the Capitol Hill switchboard. And just say you want to talk to Tammy Baldwin's staff or talk to Mark Pocan's staff and thank them for the great job they did yesterday. You're listening to Mornings with Pat Kreitlow. He's on vacation this week. I'm Matt Rothschild. She's Angela Lang. We'll be with you right after the break with Pastor Walter Jack Lanier of Milwaukee.
All right, we're out. Good morning, Pastor. Your hair looks wonderful.
Good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. Thanks for joining us bright and early. We appreciate it.
We're going to be on in 5 minutes. I got to get an engineer here just to help me with one thing. I'll be right back.
That's all good. Good.
Pastor?
Yes.
A couple of things. I'm Greg. I'm the producer of the show. I just want to give you a heads up. So during your interview, I'm turning my camera off so you three will be the focal point. He walked away.
I'm here.
Okay. And when I pop back on screen, you're going to see me giving some hand signals. So this will mean 3 minutes.
Okay.
This will mean 2 and then 1. And if you are talking when I'm doing this, that just means ramp it up because we have what's called hard breaks, which means if we don't, we will get cut off.
Okay.
And then when you're done with the interview, I just ask that you stay on StreamYard for about a minute or two so your files can upload for the best resolution. And then finally, and I don't like having to tell adults this, We are on the live stream right now. We are live. People online can hear us, and we are on radio. So please, no cussing. I have to tell all adults this now. So
I'm generally don't cuss. This second
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't.
of this administration has brought me there.
I'll put it this way. I had to start telling adults this after I had to tell the staffers for a congressman that they were cussing. So,
yeah.
All right. So we come back in about 3.5 minutes. So you guys got to do your thing, get coffee, use the restroom, pet your dog or cat.
Great to see you, Pastor.
How long are we going roughly?
Yeah, we're gonna go for 14 minutes to 11 of. And are you still senior pastor at Progressive Baptist Church?
Yep.
Okay.
There we go. All right.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Cool. 3 minutes, and we'll talk to you in a bit.
Cool.
This is great. I wanted to get you back on for a long time, Pastor.
That's good. I'm good, glad, and I have. Yeah, I just want to do more stuff publicly because we need more stuff done. We desperately need to get more organized. Angela, I'm about 3 months past due on connecting with you.
I know. I was just thinking, I was like, now that hopefully things are calming down a little bit and I have a little bit of breathing space, I have a whole list of folks I need to circle back and have meetings with, and you are at the top of the list.
All right, let's make it happen.
Yeah, for sure. And I just dropped my email in the chat too.
Sweet. Hey.
Glasses. I'd love to get another meal with you too, Pastor. That was fun when we did that.
Let's do it. I'm, for the first time in my professional career, I only have one job, so I have a lot more. I always had good flexibility, but way more autonomy in my schedule, so I can do pretty much exactly what I want to do.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, well, let's make it happen the next month or so.
All right.
After today, my life gets a little easier. It's been a busy week,
Okay.
but a fun week with Angela for sure. And I love radio. I love radio as a medium. So.
Yeah, I have a. I'm gonna have to check it out more. I think we talked about this. I'm telling you what you already know. You know, we need to do more with media because there's so much
30 seconds
propaganda and there's so much noise.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah, and civic media is a good opportunity for folks.
Mm-hmm.
The other hosts of the other great programs are more than happy to make room for people who have good things to say. So
Yeah.
hey, welcome back to Mornings with Pat Kreitlow all across the Civic Media Radio Network. Pat's on vacation this week, and Angela Lang and I'm Matt Rothschild, have been subbing in for him. We're always in the bullpen, ready to be called in when needed. And we've been enjoying this opportunity, and I want to thank Pat for giving us this opportunity, and Civic Media, for that matter, for allowing us to come on the air and to be with you. And right now with us is Pastor Walter Jack Lanier. He is the senior pastor of the Progressive Baptist Church in Milwaukee. He's a civil rights activist and a pillar of the community, having taught for 14 years at MATC in Milwaukee and serving as chair of the Milwaukee County Pension Board, as well as being on the boards of Managed Health Services, Legacy Bank, and Citizen Action of Wisconsin. Pastor Lanier, welcome to the show.
Always good to be here. Great to be here with two dynamic personalities, and Angela Lang and yourself. I'm honored and privileged to share space with you two.
Oh,
Yeah.
likewise. I'm
Yeah.
very much looking forward to this.
Yeah, it's our pleasure. We're Facebook friends, Pastor, and I always try to look at your postings. And you posted something the other day that I didn't know was happening in here in Wisconsin. I'm just going to read from that post, and I want to get your reaction to it. White supremacist flyers have been distributed across Wisconsin, in Fitchburg, and that's right near where I live, Milwaukee, Whitewater, Mukwonago, Hartford, West Bend, Mequon, where I have a sister-in-law, Cedarburg, Grafton, and Germantown. They appear in plastic bags weighted with pellets, left on porches and driveways under cover of night. Some come from the neo-Nazi Aryan Freedom Network. Others are fake mass deportation notices designed to intimidate immigrant communities. This isn't just hateful, you posted. It's strategic. It's psychological warfare, you said, and it's meant to make us feel unwelcome, unsafe, and alone. That's pretty dramatic. I didn't know it's going on, and it's disgusting. And how'd you hear about this?
I'm just a voracious consumer of news. So I gobble up stuff, every morning just to see what's going on, to try to get a sense for the big picture. And so I just saw several stories over the course of the past month or so about these flyers showing up. And so I went and pulled them all together, and I saw here's a list of spaces and places where this is transpiring here in Wisconsin.
And what does it tell you about Wisconsin or about the political moment we're in?
Well, that spirit, that evil, that vile, depraved way of thinking has never left the nation. We always have to start with that. It's not like it was ever lovely and sweet and great. Remember, civil rights came on the backs of death and bloodshed and protest. We were dragged into civil rights that were not fully provided. So that spirit has always been there. And this recent administration, second time around, has just created the environment where people are more emboldened, more empowered to act, and but still cowardly. So they're more emboldened, more empowered, but still acting in a very cowardly fashion, dropping flyers when they can't be seen. So it's still an act of cowardice, but now they're emboldened. And so that's what's made it come forward. We know that this just the vile, nasty, brutish, depraved, inhumane language of this current administration and those who follow it is bringing people up from the sewer.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that we mentioned, we had Abigail on from Fair Wisconsin talking about some of the attacks on the LGBTQ plus community. And it got into this discussion about how sometimes, Trump is doing all of these things. They tend to get stopped or legally blocked, but the harm it causes in the interim, and then how, as you said, it emboldens more of like this interpersonal type of bigotry.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious your thoughts of how, yes, there's the structural policies and legislation that we need to change and all of that and combat, but also how do we start to tackle this kind of interpersonal dynamic where, after the first Trump administration, we saw an increase in hate crimes, for example. Mm-hmm. How do we deal with that interpersonal type of level?
That's tough. That's a great question because, what happens in people are cowards by themselves, and then they become emboldened in crowds. You know that mm-hmm. from when you were in 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th grade. And so we have to speak up swiftly in spaces where BS or violence or threats or antagonism or harsh words or, jokes are lifted up. We have to be vigilant for ourselves and for others. So I've got to speak up for you. You've got to speak up for me. I've got to speak up for Matt. Matt's got to speak up for you. We have to combat it and say what's out of order, what's inappropriate. We can't, we have to be responsive. This whole flooding of the zone policy wise, but it's the same thing energy wise. It's actually why I've increased my pushing out content on social media, because it's one thing to see stupidity and just be disgusted and go on to the next thing, but because it's so stupid and it's so vile, it needs to be addressed on a regular basis.
That's a good point.
I like that we have to speak up not only for ourselves but for each other. I think that's a crucial point that you make, Pastor Lanier, and that means we need to speak up for the immigrants who are under attack. We need to speak up for the LGBT folks who are under attack. We need to speak up for the judges who are under attack, because it's just across the board right now, and we can't get overwhelmed by it either. That's the thing.
Right.
I
go ahead.
No, I just how do you speak to people either at in your church or in the greater movement who are just feeling so beleaguered right now?
Yeah, so my style of communication tends to be high in context and framing. So I like to reframe or accurately frame narratives or disrupt foolishness. And that helps as a pastor. So I'm always trying to ground us in the current reality. Here's what's going on. I'm going to call evil, evil. I'm going to call vile, vile. I'm going to call stupid, stupid, and whatever else it is, and just call it out for once. Because what happens is we get deluged with stuff, and it is overwhelming for a lot of people, understandably so. And so they just get worn down and back down and get quiet. And somebody has to speak up and speak out and sometimes provide language. One of the successes of the Trump regime is the destruction of truth. So everything anybody says is suspect, and you don't want to call a lie a lie. And so somebody's got to say, no, that's a lie. No, that's not true. That's false. That's inaccurate. That's garbage. That's BS. That's not right. And just keep saying it, not to be overly psychological, but I just had this conversation with my wife. We were talking about, what do you do when you're dealing with a narcissist? What do you do when you're dealing with a sociopathic, and not just generally, but how do you address it? And you have to be responsive. You can't let things go unresponded to. Otherwise they stick in the mind. The other thing I'll say, Matt, is just my instinct is that we have to tighten up our networks, or we have good relationships, good networks, strengthen the sinew, see who are my people, and draw a bit more closely and cultivate relationships so that we're stronger together. Whatever the together is, let's strengthen that.
I know you've been working on that in the Milwaukee area with some social justice groups, and I know Angela is working on that with a broad range of pro-democracy groups in the nonprofit sector here in Wisconsin. I used to be part of that, the Wisconsin Democracy Campaign, and I think Scott Walker helped bring us closer together and reminded us, just as Trump is reminding us now, that this is no time for individualistic ego games and turf wars between nonprofit pro-democracy groups or leaders. This is time to put all that stuff on the shelf, and let's work together against this huge threat that we all face. And I think folks in Wisconsin are recognizing that, and this broader movement that we all need to be a part of, I think, is coming together. Angela, what's your sense of it?
Yeah, I mean, as someone that's like organized in Milwaukee, like my whole career, it can be difficult, right? Like, and I think in organizing spaces, there can be, some egos. And I think what I've noticed, especially in Milwaukee, is that like people can play nice, people can come together when it really matters, but we have to find those commonalities. Same way, speaking or in my opinion, from the Black community, we are not homogenous. We all do not agree. And so there's some real stuff that we have to like wrestle with. But I keep saying, if we're going to be in the struggle together, then like, let's struggle together. Let's have those conversations. We don't always need to agree on everything. But right now there's this bigger, attack on our communities. And how are we looking inward? And as you said, Pastor Lanier, how are we building those networks? Because that was what my instinct of, I need to take a break after the November election. I need to process and not just go into planning. And what I noticed myself and others, we were moving inward. We were, trying to strengthen relationships, even on an interpersonal level with our trans and undocumented friends. hey, we know the election went the way it did, know that I'm here. But then how are we also doing that in our communities as well? And I think it's something that we're still learning to do. But I think the urgency of the moment allows us to be able to have those conversations.
Pastor Lanier, how do you give people hope in this really tricky, difficult time?
Yeah, great question. I don't want to oversimplify it. Hope, I'm deeply grounded in that. It's hope as a principle, hope and faith as a spiritual principle. Historically, let me say it this way. I'm Black in America, and America has. I'm gonna give you some right now. And America has done all that it can from its inception unto this very moment to destroy Black people. But we're still here. And so we have been here before. It doesn't seem like it. Perhaps we may forget that. But if we look at historically, Angela's not supposed to be here. I'm not supposed to be here. We're supposed to be in an institution or dead or at the bottom of the ocean or hanging from some tree, literally, or shot to death, illiterate, uneducated, not able to read. But here we are, leading and gathering. And so we've overcome more than this with less resources. And so we need to draw back on our historical wins and fight to overcome oppression and bigotry and hatred, and our ability to forge together to do what seemed impossible. This is a tough time, but we have overcome worse with less. And then that's where some of the focus has to come together, pushing away some of what we call in the church and the Bible petty disputations, and really hone in on working together and strategizing together. And good at the end triumphs over evil. It takes a minute sometimes, but it triumphs over evil. I deeply believe that. I think the record is accurate.
Thank you so much for that.
Point, yeah.
Some really great point of getting over petty disputations. I love that. And I love all your work to, as you put it, disrupt foolishness. That's tremendous. Pastor Walter Jack Lanier of the Progressive Baptist Church in Milwaukee has been our guest, and we'll be right back on Mornings with Pat Kreitlow, all across the Civic Media Radio Network. I'm Matt Rothschild. I'm here with Angela Lang.
Got it. Yes, sir.
It's not time yet. It's 7 o'clock.
Yep. Cycling.
Pastor, that was great. Thanks so much.
Thank you
Appreciate
so much.
it. Yeah.
Yes.
You're out. So, Pastor, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tuck you back into the green room. You can go about and do whatever you need to do, and we'll let the files upload, and then give it like 2-3 minutes, and you should be great.
All right. And then what? Then I'm done?
You can
Then
just
you're
click.
done, yeah.
You can just click out completely.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Thank you very
Thank
much
so
for your time, sir.
Pastor.
All right. Bye.
Talk soon.
Couldn't have been better. That was inspirational. Loved
Yeah.
it.
All right.
Take care. I needed that.
All right.
We've
I'm gonna
gone through worse with less. I needed that. Yep.
Yeah. All right. Actually, I'm going to do this real quick. Pastor, you're all set. You're all uploaded. You can leave whenever you'd like.
All right. Talk to both of you guys soon.
All right,
And
take
I
care.
already emailed you, madam, and email you now too, so we can get connected.
Sounds good.
great. Thank you,
All
Pastor.
right.
All right.
I hope Pat Kreitlow wasn't listening to that as I butchered his name.
It's fine.
All right, here.
He's fine. He's good. All right, we come back in a little more than 2 minutes. Angela, really? A Rockstar energy drink at 6 a.m.?
That's the point. It's 6 a.m. You
That's
want me to
weird.
do this uncaffeinated? Because then
Well-
we're probably going to get into all sorts of fines
Well,
and FCC guidelines, okay?
Coffee, tea,
I need some caffeine. I hope there's
It doesn't give the same punch.
I hope
Sorry.
there's a Coke in the
Oh my goodness.
break. So you're gonna come in with Ebony and Ivory? Is that what you're doing?
Yep, one of the greatest duets in history.
Mm-mm.
The 80s when we thought racism was solved.
Who would have thought?
Two rich guys who don't have any problems. I'm not a religious man, and I want to go to church now to see him. So
Yeah, that's how I felt.
Same. There's a few pastors specifically where I'm like, I'd go to church, right? Because I respect the institution, all of that. I'm not a religious person. I'm kind of semi-raised Catholic, like a bunch of folks, but like not really.
Yeah.
But even same with Judge Everett Mitchell. Like he was
Yeah.
like, "Hey, I'm speaking at this church on Sunday, and I found one of the most conservative dresses I could find," and was like, "Okay," and I'm in the pews clapping, and there's something about a great orator and a great inspirational speaker too. So it's like I kind of
Yeah.
view it that way.
Absolutely. Agreed. All right. We come back in 40 seconds.
Cool.
Right. So I'll identify the song and the anniversary, and then I'm going to do a little history stuff, and then
Sounds
we'll
great.
go to you for some music stuff.
Sounds good.
All right. Hey, welcome back to Mornings with Ted Kreitlow, all across the Civic Media Radio Network. I'm Matt Rothschild here with Angela Lang, and we're doing This Day in History. That's why we're playing Ebony and Ivory. That song came out on May 15th, 1982, and got to be #1, if you can believe it. So I want to talk about other moments in history on this date. 1938, Diane Nash was born. Diane Nash is a civil rights activist who co-founded SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. Tremendous activist who helped organize the nonviolent sit-ins and freedom rides in the early 1960s that led to the passage of the Civil Rights Acts. Diane Nash has visited Wisconsin before, and I hope she'll come back a real leader of the civil rights movement. I wanted to give a shout out to Diane Nash. Happy birthday. And then I was also nosing around on the internet yesterday to see what else is noteworthy from May 15th. And I found something about a general strike in Canada. On this day in 1919, the Winnipeg General Strike occurred. And this is a strike that went on for 6 weeks. It was the biggest strike in the history of Canada. Lasted 6 weeks till government troops repressed the strike, riding in on horseback, firing into a crowd of strikers, killing 2, and then they arrested the leaders. So it wasn't a successful strike right away, but it did lead to a lot of pro-worker legislation and pro-worker organizing, and actually some political organizing too. So that was kind of an interesting thing to learn. We had Bill Fletcher Jr. on a couple of days ago who was talking about general strikes, and he knows a general strike would be a great thing, but he was doubtful that we could pull it off here, since it's been decades also in the United States since there was a general strike. The last one was in the early 30s, I think. So anyway, that was part of history on this date, May 15th. 1940, the Nazis moved into northern France on this date. That's something to remember. On this date in 1970, Jackson State. On May 15th, less than 2 weeks after the shooting at Kent State, 2 black students at Jackson State were killed and 12 were injured when police opened fire during student demonstrations. A lot of people just remember Kent State. It also happened at Jackson State. So those are some things that popped out to me on this day in history, May 15.
I wonder why we don't remember Jackson State. Okay.
Just an idle question there from Greg.
There it is, out in the world. All right.
Yeah, imagine that. But there you have it. We need to remember it. That's why I wanted to pop that one up.
Yeah.
Angela,
Yeah.
Diane Nash, does that ring a bell to you? Do you know Diane Nash's work?
Yeah, when you said it, I was like, why do I know that name? Absolutely. Because as a student organizer myself, you kind of uncover some of that history, and you see the intersections with like the civil rights movement and the student movement specifically. Because I was a part of a organization once upon a time called United Council, which was the oldest a statewide student association. It was like the closest thing that we had to a student movement or a student union, where each, UW campus, they had a referendum to see if they want to pay dues to United Council. And shocker, Scott Walker gutted it in his budget, repair bill, all of that. So United Council doesn't exist any longer. But it was really kind of digging in the archives and understanding this intersection between the student movement and also understanding why it continues to be attacked generation after generation. Students now are being attacked, and what does it look like to continue to have these demonstrations and see them as like a pipeline as well for long-term organizing and activism. Clearly Scott Walker did, and that's why he gutted part of that. But yeah, happy birthday to her.
Yeah, quite a hero of the civil rights movement. And that's the thing. People think civil rights movement, they think Martin Luther King, or
Right.
they may think of one or other two people, but it was a mass movement led by a lot of people that most Americans don't know. Diane Nash is one of them. We should
A lot
know
of
more
women.
about. Yeah,
Shocker again. Why don't we always talk about the women?
So she's someone I urge our listeners to find out a little bit more about. Diane Nash, still with us in her 80s right now. Greg, do you have other musical notes on this anniversary?
Helps to turn my microphone on. I do. In 1990, Mariah Carey released her first single. It's a ballad we all know. We've all been to Skateland before. Vision of Love. This is what we would call a slow skate jam, Matt. They announce it. You get your crush, you hold hands, and then you play red light, green light after that. Brings back all the feels, all the memories.
Slow dancing at the prom.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, exactly. It went to number one, and it was part of her becoming the best-selling female artist of the 90s. And actually, today's the day. I didn't know this. In 1940, Richard and Maurice McDonald opened up the first McDonald's restaurant, which was actually a barbecue place, and it didn't work, so they switched to hamburgers. And then a clown came in and ruined their lives,
as clowns do.
As they do.
Can you imagine an alternate timeline where McDonald's sold barbecue and not burgers and everything that they have now? Like, there's a timeline somewhere where that exists.
Yeah, there's in the multiverse, the grand calculus of the multiverse.
Wild.
Yeah. And then in 1993, Janet Jackson went to number one with this wonderful, wonderful tune. That's The Way Love Goes. Yeah, Angela's feeling it. I'm feeling, yes.
I was like, which song is it? Yes.
And in 2010, Usher hits number one in America with his collaboration with will.i.am with OMG.
Oh.
Giving him chart-topping hits in the 90s, the aughts, and the 10s. Way to go, Usher. He's going places.
I think he's got a bright future ahead of him.
I think so too. Look out for that guy. He's fun.
I'm not worried about him.
Yeah, right?
We'll be back in a little bit here right after the break. You're listening to Mornings with Pat Kreitlow. I'm Matt Rothschild. She's Angela Lang. He's Greg Bach. And we're going to be talking with Jeff Mandel of Law Forward right after the break. So you don't want to miss that. And you can join at 855-752-4842.
All right, we are out. Mr. Mandel, welcome back to Civic Media. How are you today?
Good morning.
Great, thanks. Good morning. Good to see you both.
Good to see you as well. Matt ran off. So this is a longer break. We're coming back at 7:06. I know you've been on the shows before, but just a reminder, we're on the live stream right now. So FCC compliant on the air. Please be FCC compliant. You know the hand signals. That just means 3, 2, and 1. If you're talking while I'm doing this, this means ramp it up or ramp it down, land the plane. And then finally, When we're finished with the interview, if you can just stick back for like a minute or two, I'm going to put you in the waiting room. You don't have to do anything. We just want to let the files in your computer upload so we can get the best resolution for videos.
Great.
Other than that, you are set. We'll see you in a little more than 5 minutes.
Sounds good.
All right. 30 seconds. Live from Wisconsin across the Civic Media Radio Network, you are listening to Mornings with Pat Kreitlow. Now sitting in for Pat Kreitlow, Matt Rothschild, and Angela Lang.
Thanks, Greg Bach, for that beautiful voice of yours and that nice introduction. I am Matt Rothschild. Happy to be with Angela Lang here. We've been here the last 3 mornings, and this is our last morning together, so I hope you'll enjoy the show for the next 2 hours. You can join or text 855-752-4842. That's 855-75-CIVIC. And right now we're joined by a tremendous guest. His name is Jeff Mandel. He's the executive director of Law Forward, this public interest pro-democracy law firm here in Wisconsin, which has done so much over just its first couple years in helping Wisconsin get fairer maps and flashing a spotlight on the false electors and putting the heat on the false electors, putting the heat on Michael Gableman. I mean, they've just done a tremendous amount of work with a small staff and just getting up and running. It's really it's an amazing record. Jeff Mandel, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. It's great to see you.
Well, I wanted to start off just to get your reaction to what's happened to Judge Dugan, to her arrest, and how you put that in perspective, what you make of that.
It's really interesting. I think it's deeply unfortunate. I don't know all of the facts. I'm not sure any of us really does know exactly what happened in the courthouse that morning. But what we do know is that this is really a remarkable example of federal overreach and an exertion of federal power that we don't see very often, to arrest a judge, handcuff them, and march them out of a courthouse.
Right.
And the information that we've seen thus far from the government is very, very thin. And it is hard to see on those facts that this is worthy of the kind of departure from our norms and traditions that we see here. So I think it's deeply concerning. We might learn a little bit more this morning in court when Judge Dugan appears. I was glad to see the paperwork yesterday that Judge Dugan's attorneys filed, pointing out how much this is a departure from the way that we usually understand federal government to work. And I was really impressed with the way that they took a terrible decision last year by the US Supreme Court to grant then former President Trump complete and total immunity for certain official actions. And they tried to turn that around and make make a purse out of a sow's ear, as it were, and say, well, if it's good for him, then it has to apply to other people, other officials as well, and the court needs to take that into consideration. So I'm interested to see what happens. And they drew a good, careful, thoughtful judge in Judge Edelman, and I think this is going to be fascinating and important. And I'm glad that the national media has continued to focus on this, that this wasn't a flash in the pan that then went away, but that we're continuing to see sustained focus on this issue, because it's very, very important.
I had MSNBC texting me that day and was like, I saw Kash Patel's tweet, what is happening? And it was like 9 something in the morning. I was like, this is what we know so far. She's got a hearing at 10:30. She was picked up around 8:30. And so I was like giving him information like all day and, connecting him with other folks. And I was too very pleased, because I think right now, we talk about how they want to flood the zone. If they overwhelm us, some of the big things they're trying to bury, and I think this is one of them. And I'm glad to see that, press continue to follow this story. I'm curious of what do you think the long-term impact of this? Because I think, I know a lot of lawyers these days, a lot of great lawyers, and it feels like there was almost like a chilling effect. Like we knew that, you know, the Trump administration was going to do these things. They'd written it out. But even if her case does get dismissed, like what is the signal it's sending, and what does this mean long term for folks, and how we're trying to function in a semi-democracy right now?
I think you're exactly right, Angela, that for the administration, it's less about winning or losing and more about intimidating people and trying to prevent them from doing their jobs, to prevent them from doing what they think is right, to prevent them from taking a careful look at the law and thinking it through and standing up for what they believe the law is. The administration, which itself takes untenable legal positions all the time and is constantly pushing the envelope, is trying to make sure that there are fewer and fewer people willing to stand up in opposition to that. And one of the things, in addition to the fact that that the media continues to pay attention to this case, and that is, I think, good and inspiring. But another thing is that we are seeing conservative attorneys being willing to represent Judge Dugan. So yesterday's motion was filed by Strang Bradley, distinguished, well-known, excellent criminal defense attorneys here in Wisconsin who are part of her team and are well known as liberal. But Steve Biskupik, a former U.S. attorney in Milwaukee, who was appointed to that position by George W. Bush, and is a well-known conservative, was actually one of the defense lawyers in our case against the fraudulent electors. But he is standing up and defending Judge Dugan, and I'm pleased to see that. Paul Clement, former Solicitor General of the United States, a native Wisconsinite, who has become one of the foremost attorneys in Washington, D.C., and is quite conservative. Again, a distinguished member of the Bush administration, standing up and joining the Dugan defense team. And I think that is also a really good sign for the rule of law.
And it's also a signal to the Trump Justice Department that they're not going to have an easy road ahead. They're not going to have an easy road at trial. If there's an appeal, Clement, former Solicitor General, is probably one of the best lawyers in the country on appellate law. And so they're going to have a tough road. Maybe they don't care. Maybe they just wanted the symbolism of putting a judge in shackles on her ankles and shackles on her wrists just to show off. But I got to believe they're not going to win this case.
I have a hard time imagining that they are ultimately going to prevail in this case. Again, we don't know all the facts, but based on what's public now, it is difficult to really see how this is valid and proper.
Jeff, you mentioned Trump pushing the envelope. That's kind of putting it mildly, and not as a criticism to you. But how close are we to this constitutional crisis? Because in my mind, we're there already. Because it seems to me he's been flagrantly disobeying the courts, especially on the Abrego Garcia case, where they're supposed to facilitate his release from that prison in El Salvador, and they're not doing jack about it, as far as I can tell. And one administration official after another says he'll never set foot in the United States again, or if he does, we'll ship him back. What do you make of all that?
Well, I think you're right, Matt. I think we're teetering right on the edge of this constitutional crisis. The Trump administration, in a way that is, I believe, unprecedented in our history, has a flagrant disregard for both the law and the courts. And it is one thing for an administration to say that they disagree with past administrations or sort of majority understandings of longstanding law, and they're going to try new things. We saw some of that in the first Trump administration. But it's another thing to do that in a flood the zone kind of way, where you're doing it everywhere all at once, and also disregarding court orders when the courts try to rein you in and say, no, that might be clever, but it's not correct. That's not what the law means. It seems to me that the question of whether we are really in a constitutional crisis or just on the verge of one is largely about the U.S. Supreme Court. The court orders that you're talking about, that the administration has been contemptuous of and largely defied, have mostly been lower court orders. And when things get up to the Supreme Court, my read is that the U.S. Supreme Court has been trying incredibly hard to walk a tightrope and try to rein the administration in a little bit, but not so much that it creates outright conflict and a crisis. The Abrego Garcia matter is the best example, though, where it's not clear that that tightrope can be sustained, and that there just may not be a happy medium or a balance here. And I think we'll also learn a lot more this morning in the arguments at the US Supreme Court about birthright citizenship, because here's another example of the Trump administration taking an idea and a principle that has been settled law, for 160 years. There's never really been any serious question about what the 14th Amendment means, that people who are born within the territory of the United States are therefore citizens. They are taking a radically different position. But today's hearing is in some ways less about that than it is about whether federal district court judges, that is federal trial judges, have the authority to issue orders that really bind the administration, or whether they're only about the specific plaintiff in that case. And that is a crucial, crucial question.
So what happens if the Trump administration keeps ignoring decisions at the federal court, trial level, or at the U.S. Supreme Court level? Let's just say, like Stephen Miller says about Abrego Garcia, the courts have no role in deciding. This is the presidential authority, and they can't tell us what to do. Then where are we?
Well, that's the $1 million question. I mean, that's the question on which the future of democracy hinges. And if I try to be generous to the current U.S. Supreme Court, which at times can be difficult, but I think that they're trying to pick their fights very carefully, because they recognize that the only thing they have in their corner is public support. And so they want to pick a fight at a place that they think the public will be with them, because they're going to need that support if the administration just follows the Stephen Miller path.
But didn't the chief just give Trump a blank check in the immunity decision? And isn't it hard to roll that back right now?
I think he did. I think it is very hard. My guess, I don't know this, but my guess is that he didn't think Trump was going to win when he did that, and that he might have thought about that differently if he thought that Trump would again exercise control over the federal government.
Well, we had Trump thank him in person at that kind of State of the Union speech there, and says, I remember this and thank you. I mean, if he did think Trump was going to lose, he was being very naive, just like the FBI director was being very naive when Hillary Clinton was running. And those are two mistakes from very senior officials in our government that have had some very grave consequences.
True. And
yeah, go ahead.
just quickly on that, I just want to say, not only are you right about that, Matt, but to call back to that moment at the president's address to the joint session of Congress, where he stopped with the Chief Justice afterwards and said, "Thank you, I won't forget what you did." It is pure mobster behavior, in the same way that 2 weeks ago or a week and a half ago, the comments from the White House lawn by Tom Homan, the administration's border czar, threatening our governor here in Wisconsin, was pure mobster behavior. This is not the way government works. This is not the way government is supposed to work. This is banana republic stuff, not a real democracy. And so, the question about when we hit a constitutional crisis and what precipitates that is, will it be something that people will fully recognize and refuse to accept? Because we are quickly getting to a point that's the question. What will the public accept?
And we can't accept this pure mobster behavior. We can't accept a president who refuses to obey a court order coming from whichever court, but especially from the U.S. Supreme Court. And my feeling is we're going to be there sooner than later. Jeff Mendel's the executive director of Law Forward. He's going to stay with us after this quick break. We're going to talk about a lawsuit he's bringing here in Wisconsin to give us fusion voting, the right to vote for a candidate on a separate party, and he'll explain all about it. We'll be right back. Mornings with Pat Kreitlow.
And we are out. We come back. Let's see. It's 20. Come back in 2.5 minutes. We are good to go.
And then we'll have just 7 minutes.
Jeff, can I ask you a question? Just the birthright citizenship. So it's clearly motivated by immigration, that kind of thing, their fear of the, but if they call into question birthright citizenship, does that mean that the citizenship of all Americans is up for question?
I mean, I think it does, because what they're saying is if you were born here, that doesn't matter, because if your parents weren't here legally or as citizens. So one of the questions that I have is how we'd ever unpuzzle this, because if they say they want proof of citizenship to vote, your birth certificate alone would not be enough. You'd need your parents' birth certificates, or there are lots of people who have passports right now or other citizenship documents based on a traditional understanding of birthright citizenship, but the administration might want to revoke those or claim they're not valid. I have no idea how we would even, just as a practical matter, put aside the moral implications of how we would try to unpuzzle this.
Yeah.
I mean, I've always thought about the 14th, or not always, that's a lie. Recently,
I'm always thinking about the 14th Amendment.
No, lies. But like really I was making the connection after November about the 14th Amendment and like the history of the 14th Amendment and why it exists and how it's supposed to help, enslaved folks and their descendants. And I was like, they're using this for one community now, but if we look at the origins, what does that mean for Black folks, right? And that's something, I've been concerned about. But to your point, Greg, I'm just like, this theoretically is not just like an immigrant issue.
Yeah. We spoke to Judge Paul Michel yesterday from Keeping Our Republic, and basically the idea of habeas corpus, you suspend it. You can't suspend it for some, it's suspended for all.
Right.
Period. That's it. So we come back in 30 seconds. Excellent discussions today, my friends. Excellent talks today. So
look at this. We had to go out with a bang. It's our finale week. It's our finale show.
It's your series finale. You're not done, but you know what I mean. No. Season finale. There we go.
There we go.
And then you get to sleep in.
Very excited about that.
15 seconds.
Welcome back to Kreitlow. I'm Matt Rothschild, co-hosting today with Angela Lang, as we have been all week as Pat's on vacation. And we hope you'll join the show by calling or texting 855-752-4842. That's 855-75-CIVIC, as we're broadcasting all across the Civic Media Radio Network. And we still have Jeff Mandel with us, which I'm grateful for. Jeff Mandel's the executive director of Law Forward. And right before the break, I was trying to introduce this concept of fusion voting, which you have brought a lawsuit about. I didn't do a great job of it, so I'm going to throw it to you, Jeff, to explain what that lawsuit is all about and what fusion voting's about.
Sure, thanks. Fusion voting is an electoral reform. That is, it is a way that would change how our elections are run and administered. And the goal of bringing back fusion voting is an old idea from our history, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But the goal here is to empower voters and to try to break what social scientists and political scientists call the two-party doom loop. The idea that the Democratic and Republican parties are so powerful that they crowd out all other political parties, and we see greater and greater polarization. This is something that is rich, particularly in Wisconsin history. But if we go back, and I'll try to be quick about this, if we go back to the mid-19th century, to before the Civil War, there were two major political parties in this country, the Democrats and the Whigs. And the major issue roiling the country, appropriately, was slavery. And the Democrats were pro-slavery at that point. The Whigs didn't really have a party position, and different members of the party took different positions. And so what you saw growing up were a whole bunch of small abolitionist parties. And those parties in the 1850s came together in Ripon, Wisconsin, at a small schoolhouse, and they created the Republican Party. They said, we're going to pool our resources, but they didn't immediately run people as Republicans. What they did is they cross-nominated. So people from the Free Soil Party said, well, we're going to have a candidate run for this position, and the Liberty Party, you have somebody run for this other position, and our people will vote for your person, and your people will vote for our person. And that was really typical. This was a huge part of how 19th century American politics worked. The major players at the Wisconsin Constitutional Convention in the 1840s were actually not Democrats or Whigs. They were members of smaller parties that cross-nominated each other. And so what fusion voting does is try to bring that back. It says that one candidate for office can appear on the ballot multiple times because if they're nominated by different parties. So you could have a candidate who is a Republican, and that same candidate for governor or for Senate or for any other partisan position could also be nominated by another party. Let's call it the Conservative Party, and you could vote for that person on the Conservative Party line. And when the election is over, you just add up all the votes that each person got, and whoever got the most votes wins. But it's a way of trying to empower individuals to create new parties and to break out of one of the things that's hampering our politics, which is the suffocation of our two major parties.
There was an argument before the Wisconsin Supreme Court a few decades ago. I know Joel Rogers at the University of Wisconsin-Madison helped with this lawsuit, but they lost on one case at the Wisconsin Supreme Court. What gives you hope that maybe this time it'll work?
Sure. And just to finish the history, and I'll come back into that piece, what happened was after the Republican Party really consolidated control in Wisconsin, the Republican Party became a major national force, right? Abraham Lincoln gets elected to the presidency, and the Whig Party dissolves. We don't really hear about the Whig Party after the Civil War. And across the country, in almost every single state, whatever the dominant party was, so in the North, essentially the Republican Party, they made fusion voting illegal, so no one could ever do this to them. In the South, the Democratic Party, they made fusion voting illegal, so no one could ever do this to the Democrats. And so in almost every state in the country, fusion voting has been illegal for a century, and we're trying to bring it back. As you say, there was an effort about 20 years ago to do this. It was done under the federal Constitution, and it failed both in Wisconsin and at the U.S. Supreme Court. We are coming under the state of Wisconsin Constitution and saying our state Constitution confers certain rights. I would also note that those cases, one of the things they said is, we don't need this. Our Constitution doesn't demand this because we have a stable two-party system. I would argue that what we've seen over the last quarter century is that our two-party system is much less stable today than the courts assumed it to be then. And so we're going to take a run at this and see if we can bring this back. I don't think it's a silver bullet. I don't think it solves all of our problems, but it is one small piece of trying to make things better and empower voters rather than political bosses.
And I know there are voters across the political spectrum who want to see this happen, who are sick and tired of what you call the two-party doom loop, or the oligopoly, as Ralph Nader used to call it, probably still calls it, and to let third parties, fourth parties, bloom again. And one of your arguments, I glanced at your filing, is a freedom of association argument, correct?
Correct. People have the right to group together in ways that are effective, and this prohibition on fusion voting makes that impossible. You could imagine a group of Wisconsinites who want to get together and create a party that is more moderate than one of our two major parties right now. You could imagine groups who want to get together and create a party that's more progressive than the Democrats, or that's more conservative than the Republicans. You can also imagine groups of people who want together and group together around a single issue. Maybe there's a marijuana reform party that says, we don't care about your other issues. This is what we think is most important, and we will endorse anyone who promises that they will get this through the Wisconsin legislature. There are all kinds of ways that this could work. And the reason that the Republican and Democratic parties banned fusion voting in the late 19th and early 20th century was because it worked. And so we're trying to re-empower voters.
Oh, well, good luck with that. That's Jeff Mendel. He's the executive director of Law Forward. And we'll be right back on Mornings with Pat Kreitlow. I'm Matt Rothschild, joined by Angela Lang, my co-host. And we're coming back with Representative Francesca Hong. So you're not going to want to miss that.
And we are out.
Thanks,
so
Jeff.
much,
Really
Jeff.
appreciate it.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank
so
you
much,
both.
Jeff.
It was a pleasure. And Greg, sorry, I was half a second late there. I tried.
Don't worry. Don't worry. No, you got. Yeah, don't
We're good.
stop being so Midwestern, for God's sakes. I'm going to tuck you back into the waiting room, and like I said, just give it like a minute or two, and then you should be free to clock out, and you're good to go. I appreciate your time, sir.
Sounds great. I hope everybody has a wonderful day. Thank you so
too.
much.
You too.
And in the room, we've Assembly member Francesca Hong.
Good morning.
How are you?
Oh, just fantastic.
We get to hang out later.
I'm so excited. You can also take a nap at my place if you need.
Man, that's
I
so
love
cool.
you so much. Because Greg was getting on me last time because he was like, Rockstar, really? It's 6 a.m.
I've heard it's kind of like
swear.
I'm sorry. I've heard that Rockstar, all those things, while they might give you wings, also destroy your insides.
Okay, tell college me that before I picked one up for the first time. Okay, that's how I made it through college. Lady
friend, you are grown. All right, drink coffee like an adult. Or tea.
Coffee requires energy. I need coffee to make my coffee.
All right, Jeff, if you can hear me right now, you're good to go. You are uploaded. You can take off if you like, or you can listen to us banter. It's fine. It's the show. It's free. Couple of things, Representative. First of all, you know the rules. You know the thing. Just I have to tell all adults this. Please do not swear on the live stream or on the radio. And then, as you just heard me say to Jeff, just stick around for like a minute or two afterwards to let your files upload, and we should be all good to go. We come back in 3 minutes, and yeah.
Thanks,
That's about all. That's all I got. No problem.
Greg, don't be weird. Call me Fran.
Ain't gonna happen. Ain't gonna happen. I still call my old boss sir.
She earned the title rep anyway.
It's just a thing. I'll tell you what. When I meet you face to face, it'll become easier. But on the radio, and I feel a sense of like it just doesn't feel comfortable for me. Like it's a thing. I don't call you ma'am. All right, that's what I was raised to do.
I would leave if you called me ma'am. I would leave.
I was raised to call women ma'am and men sir. So
fair.
I mean, if that's what you're accustomed to, but democracy requires discomfort. So I'm saying you got to be uncomfortable and call me Fran at some point. But I'll come see you in person. That'll be the episode.
It took me a minute as well. Like my Leggy friends, they like look at me, and so I only do it if I'm introducing them to someone. And then after that, I was like, "This is my home girlfriend." Like
Tony's got it. He knows what to say. Fran.
Exactly, Fran.
Hey, Tony.
All right, 2 minutes. I'm gonna shut the mics off. We'll be back in a little bit. If you need to do anything cool, we'll see you back in a few.
Cool.
Thirty seconds.
Mornings with Pat Kreitlow. Pat is on vacation this week. I've been co-hosting with Angela Lang all week, and I've been enjoying doing so, and I hope you're enjoying listening to the program all across the Civic Media Radio Network. The number to call here, if you want to get on or if you want to text, 855-752-4842. That's 855-75-CIVIC. And Angela and I are now joined by Representative Francesca Hong. Representative Hong, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks so much for having me. Happy to be here.
I wanted to start just with your reaction to what the Joint Finance Committee did last week. And I hate calling it the Joint Finance Committee. It's not joint. It's overwhelmingly Republican, and the Republicans just do what they want to do. There's no bipartisanship whatsoever there. Tell me about your reaction.
It's no surprise at this point the Republicans have absolutely no interest in actually meeting the needs of their communities, let alone listening to their constituents. So when they voted out 612 of the governor's proposal, everything from healthy school meals for all to eliminating lead out of our waters, other environmental protections, legalizing cannabis, fully funding our public schools. This is now the fourth budget where they've just not even brought any of those proposals up for debate. They're starting at what we call back to base. And, you know, even though thousands of Wisconsinites showed up at these listening sessions to tell those folks to their face what they needed for their communities, Mark Line and Bourne decided, nah, we're just going to do the bidding of Robin Voss again.
It makes a mockery of so-called listening sessions there if they're just not going to listen at all.
Yeah.
Precisely.
Waste of folks' time.
Yeah. I want people to, if you're listening and you want to let your legislator know, Representative Francesca Hong just mentioned Senator Mark Line. Here's his email, SEN period for Senator, Mark Line, MARKLEIN. That's sen.markline at legis for legislature, legis.wi.gov. I'm going to give it to you once more. sen.markline at legis.wi.gov. And you can do the same thing for Bourne. sen.bourne at legis.wi.
Oh, Bourne is a assembly person, so it's rep.born.
There you go. So that would be rep.bourne at legis.wi.gov. Give them an earful. It's just disgraceful what they did at the so-called Joint Finance Committee last week.
And if you feel like heading out to the Spring Green area or Beaver Dam, there are folks in those communities who representative and their senator are not listening to them. So I think it's important that someone goes out and lets them know that there's a lot of issues Wisconsinites connect on, childcare especially being one of them. And I know for Senator Mark Line, he's been getting an earful about that for years and has done nothing.
And there was a public hearing or there was a meeting that he was invited to, a public meeting in New Glarus earlier this week. We had a child care provider, Corrine Hendrickson, who had invited him to come to that, and he just didn't show. It's right in his district.
Yep, it's really disgraceful. And childcare workers at this point, they are asking for the $13 an hour that was funded through the Child Care Account program. That's where we are. Childcare, you know, it's part of infrastructure, childcare, anything in the care economy, paid leave, caregiving work, long-term care. These are things that are absolutely disintegrating. And if we don't invest in these people now who are so willing to do care work, it's a future that I really don't think any of us want to be a part of.
I mean, it's amazing. These are the people who are taking care of our kids and taking care of our elderly parents or grandparents, and they're the least remunerated people in our economy. And yet the Republicans at the so-called Joint Finance Committee were not able to sustain the child care industry in the way they need it. And Representative Hong, you're a small business owner. You know how hard it is to keep the doors open. And for child care providers, according to the study that they presented, they're going to lose up to a quarter to a third of every child care business in Wisconsin if this funding is not restored. I mean, that's just a horrible consequence of these savage cuts.
Absolutely. I mean, parents are going to lose care, providers are going to lose businesses, childcare workers and educators are going to lose their jobs. But I mean, it's ultimately, we all have to care about our kids. I wonder who is going to take care of Senator Markline and Mark Bourne. If our care facilities close, if we don't have child care centers and parents and care providers aren't able to go to work, it's already incredibly difficult right now to be making a living wage and getting by. And we should be a state where people have opportunity to thrive, not struggling to survive.
So thinking about like how you organize in this like political climate, right? This isn't your first rodeo. You've been dealing with, some of your colleagues across the aisle for years now. And we had State Rep Christian Phelps on earlier in the week, and I asked a similar question I want to pose to you. And I think it tees up for something else I want to mention is how do you all like organize understanding these, and I say organize, I don't use that term with every elected official, but you are an organizer and like how you show up and whatnot too. How do you all like navigate this moment, understanding the political climate, and how are we able to bring folks together? And I also want to leave space to talk about some news from earlier this month that involved you and one of the things that you helped start at the legislature, but how you all see like different ways of tools to be able to combat this political environment we're in.
I think every elected official needs to be an organizer. And one of the first things that makes a great organizer is one, you leave your insecurities at the door, and two, you actively listen. I think it's the first step in organizing is that you have to meet the folks whose lived experiences are most impacted by policy and oftentimes, too often, power and corruption that's happening at the government level. And so organizing requires leaving your ego at the door, actively listening to the needs of your communities, and then really assessing how the team that you're working in, what their strengths and weaknesses are, and who is best suited to go have really meaningful conversations to build trusted relationships. Because people right now have no reason to trust politicians. I mean, truly. And so how do we make sure that we are surrounding ourselves with people who are willing to open up conversations about, hey, these are policy decisions. The reason your schools are struggling and you're having to go to referenda, and this was over 421 referenda that were put up for votes back in 2024. These are why these things are happening. Identify some of the villains and really, share the power. It's not just necessarily about empowering, but how do you provide opportunities for other folks to really be the community leaders that they are and help you organize. And I think especially right now, Representative Phelps and I are really fortunate that we have amazing community organizers who have chosen to trust us to bear the burden and responsibility of having to say what's going on in the legislature when people, rightfully so, may not choose to tune out. And so I think it's back to basics when I think about how we organize in this moment as legislators. And it's really providing spaces for other folks to lead and then making sure that they have, the knowledge about what Robin Vos is doing, how to identify that villain, what some of the things we can do in our community while we try to build power in the Capitol and take care of one another. So that's what I'm encouraging a lot of members to think about. It's just a lot when you also have, fascists at your door and looking at you in your face, telling you, don't go back to your community with anything.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned talking about folks with lived experiences, and I really want to lift up because I am proud, although I think it's long overdue. And congratulations that earlier this month, there is now an Asian caucus at the legislature. And I think that's really important because I have an article pulled up. Being the first means nothing if you're the last, right? And when you were the first Asian state rep in Wisconsin, it feels like not that long ago, right? And then now there's enough to be able to have a caucus. And I bring this up because I do think that it's part of the organizing that you're talking about centering people's lived experiences and centering community experiences. So I just wanted to give you a moment to, one, give you your flowers for being able to help bring folks together and be able to have this caucus, but also your vision and how do you think this kind of plays into being able to build as well?
Well, I really appreciate that. Yes, we just need 2 people to create a caucus in the legislature. So when Representative Renuka Mayadev here in my neighboring district in Madison and Representative Angelito Tenorio, who represents the West Allis area, were elected, just personally, I felt this immense sense of relief and pride. We often, as leaders of color, we get pulled in a lot of directions. You're ripe for disappointment, and one of the worst things, is disappointing your communities. And when there are fewer of us or only one of us, trying to figure out how best to uplift the diversity of your community. The Asian community is one of the most diverse diasporas. It's a lot of pressure. And so personally, to have Renuka and Angelito with me there, I think is only going to make me a better legislator. And in terms of more than representation, right? It's not enough just to have folks who may look like you in the halls of power. It's really about, again, how do we share the power that we have, and how to create platforms for folks not necessarily to have us be their voice, but for folks to be able to bring their voice to spaces of influence. And really, we have a responsibility to make government accessible, right? So for folks who, I think each of us has to make ourselves more accessible than other representatives, because people for the first time maybe, learning about the state legislature, what it does, how to get engaged and be a part of a state government that is supposed to be working for them.
You talk about accessibility. A lot of Republican legislators, certainly in Congress, aren't accessible at all. Of not doing town halls anymore, not meeting their constituents. Van Orden's not doing it in his district, and then you have folks in the legislature like Senator Mark Lyon that we talked about a second ago, not meeting with his constituents, and it's not the first time either. I mean, when they were shutting down UW Richland Center, I know Todd Albaugh on the Todd Albaugh show really reported this out better than anybody, and was calling out Mark Lyon almost every day for not showing up, not being responsible, not exercising power. I mean, he's one of the chairs of Joint Finance. He could have saved that institution if he wanted to, and he failed, and he's not meeting his constituents. I mean, what do you tell people who are living in districts where their elected officials aren't accessible?
I was in Wautoma and Green Lake over the weekend, and I have to tell you, rural organizers are exceptional, and they are showing up in hundreds, and they don't care if their Republican representative or senator is not there. They are there to share stories. They are there to affirm their neighbors' struggles, but also work together to try to figure out how do we get to Madison and hold these folks accountable at their doorstep. And so I think those folks, I tell them, look to your community.
That's good advice. Please stay with us for the next segment. I want to hear from you, Representative Hong, about the Economic Bill of Rights.
Yes.
We'll be right back on Mornings with Pat Kreitlow.
And we are out. We're coming back in, well, about a little less than 3 minutes. So if you need to do anything, go for it. Do y'all need anything from me, or are you good?
No.
See, Angela.
What?
Tea has plenty of caffeine in it.
Yeah.
The great representative from Madison is drinking tea.
This is only because I actually did have to do drop off this morning, so I didn't have time to make coffee and the usual shot of espresso that follows the coffee. And so I got as far as heating water up, and the best thing you can do is make some brown water then with a little bit of coffee.
There you go.
So yes, I'm drinking tea, but how effective is it? We don't know.
We'll find out.
We'll find out at 10 a.m. when I'm in the public hearing, and how sharp I'm going to be that we're hearing a bill on if there's red dye or not in our school meals.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
Yeah. They don't care about food insecurity or healthy school meals, but they're about to tell school nutrition directors which items to buy that don't have, the different ingredients of Kennedy's.
It's about making America healthy again. Okay, I wish you'd get on board with this.
Cool.
And free lunches don't make any kid.
No, and then
a handout.
taking away, veterans, elders, children's food when you cut SNAP. That's definitely making America healthy while also cutting their health care. So we're actually just making America struggle faster.
We had one of our listeners say that she called two of her reps, and they said that they're both of the phone people who answered said that the reason why they stripped all those things out of the budget was they wanted to, quote, separate policy from finance. I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means. Like I'm not real smart, but I'm not dumb. But every time I hear that, I'm like, am I missing something here?
No.
You can't implement policy without funding behind it. These people literally don't know how a workplace outside of the state legislature works. Like if they were to go to a government agency like the Department of Health Services and actually see what it's like to administer, go through that paperwork, help people get health care, deploy people to go to clinics in rural areas, they have no concept of how to actually operate a team, let alone operate actual things that the agencies are doing. All of those proposals, they had a policy that was explaining why the money was needed.
Yeah. Okay, we got 20 seconds. I'm going to turn the mics off. We'll be back in a little bit. All right.
Hey, we're back on Mornings with Pat Kreitlow. I'm Matt Rothschild, joined by Angela Lang, my co-host of Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and today. It's been a fun 4 days here filling in for Pat. I hope you've enjoyed it too. If you're listening, 855-752-4842. And we're thrilled to have State Representative Francesca Hong still with us for the rest of this half hour. Representative Hong, in the last couple sessions, you've been introducing a bill called the Economic Bill of Rights. Talk about that.
Yes, so stoked that Representative Tenorio and the fellow members in my Democratic Socialist Caucus and I, as well as our Democratic colleagues, introduced the Economic Justice Bill of Rights. So this is actually Assembly Joint Resolution 33. And it's a set of 10 tenets that we believe every single Wisconsinite should have their government provide so that they have the agency and the opportunity to have economic security. Because it's economic security that provides folks freedom, that provides folks safety, and allows them to care for themselves and care for others. So these are things like a right to a living wage, a right to collectively bargain and form a union, a right to a retirement, accessible childcare, high quality public education. I mean, these are things that, almost all Wisconsinites can agree are good things to provide folks so that they can create opportunity for themselves.
So if all Wisconsinites probably agree that these are simple, standard, basic things, how come it hasn't been passed yet? And I hate to give space, but I think it's important to name, and we've talked about this with Rep. Phelps, of that, they don't like to hold hearings because they don't want to go on record to say why, right? But I'm curious your conversations. It can't just be a financial thing because that doesn't make sense. Paint a picture of these villains that you had mentioned, right? And why they are so opposed to basic worker rights and decency for Wisconsinites.
Well, because they're cowards in addition to being villains, right?
Ooh.
I think it's important to recognize that a lot of them aren't, acting on their own. Whether you're beholden to the donors that not just give to your campaign, but the campaigns that are financing your campaigns, right?
Mm-hmm.
On the darker money side, Speaker Voss has immense power and influence over how each of his member acts. And I think a lot of it comes down to they truly believe Wisconsinites are not united with shared values. They want to divide us. I still believe that's why they didn't want trains. They don't want folks from different zip codes to come together, have conversation, break bread, and realize that, oh, if we all had good public schools, that would probably be good for all of our communities. You're struggling with housing costs. I'm struggling with housing costs too. I would like more small businesses, independent businesses on my main streets. We would love to keep more of those open too. So when the strategy is divide and conquer, the last thing you want to do is talk about what all Wisconsinites want. And then when someone confronts you about it, it's easy to blame the Democrats, right? When we do not have the majority nor the actual power to pass legislation on our own, let alone choose which bills get a public hearing for debate. And so that coward part not only comes from ignoring their constituents and ignoring and refusing to debate, but also not recognizing that you're ignoring your own power. You can make different decisions. You can organize your caucus to act differently. You choose not to even try, and then you're going to be a mouthpiece for the speaker. They're the ones who are lacking dignity and thus want to strip it from the rest of Wisconsinites.
And Representative Hong, one of the reasons the speaker has so much power over other Republicans there is a campaign finance problem, because they rewrote the campaign finance law in 2015 to allow legislative campaign committees run by the speaker and the majority and minority leaders to collect unlimited donations from people. There used to be a limit as to what people could give to these committees, and now there's no limit. And so the speaker's able to raise unlimited amounts of money. And so if you're a Republican and disobeying what the speaker says, he's going to say, hey, I've got a couple $1 million here in my pocket. I can primary you and you're going to be dead. Isn't that what's going on too?
Well, and they get a discount, right? When they have the gerrymandered maps, like folks really didn't have to do anything, which is why it's wild that they have the audacity to judge and make decisions about work requirements for folks in transition for their benefits, to blame Wisconsinites for not being hardworking when one of our strongest values is that we all work hard. And I'll also just mention that we can be passing different types of campaign finance laws. We need more working people, single moms, bartenders, organizers, educators, to be able to run for office, but that takes money. You're putting your life on hold to go talk to your communities. We can have policies that help cover living expenses while you're campaigning. It's beautiful to see people come together and offer to mow your lawn or take care of your kid while you're campaigning, but that should actually be part of the process to make our democracy actually stronger by having working people actually have the opportunities to be able to run for office and it be sustainable. Because a lot of them are like, we're asking people to sacrifice probably much like higher paid work, higher paying jobs in the private sector to come deal with Robin Voss for like $55,000 a year, right? Like it's hard, but a lot of folks want to do this. And imagine if they had childcare, help with their mortgage, just for while they're campaigning, so they can actually represent the people who have their shared lived experiences.
Yeah, we'd have a much more representative democracy that way.
Seriously.
Representative Francesca Hong, thanks so much for being our guest today on Mornings with Pat Kreitlow. Angela Lang and I will be right back with Dave Zirin, the sports columnist for The Progressive and The Nation.
Yes, thank you all so much for having me. It's so good to see you.
Thanks, Fran.
All right, we are out. And Matt is gone. It's the second person to walk away from me.
I just gotta say bye one more time.
All right,
Bye.
bye.
Wait, Greg, are you in Madison? Is Matt in Madison?
Matt's in Madison.
Matt's
Okay.
in Madison. I live in Kenosha. I work in Racine. I also work in Milwaukee. I own a comedy club there. So I'm like all up and down. Yeah, I know. I'm
What's
a big
the
deal.
comedy club?
It's called the Laughing Tap. It's no, it's a scrappy little number in Walker's Point.
Oh, all right. Well, now
I'd
I'm
offer you
make a
free
Milwaukee
tickets.
night.
What's like the level of free stuff you can take? What's your price? Is it $25?
It's 50, but I try not to do any. Someone when I was in Green Lake, one of the guys in one of the organizers, he like walked up and gave me a 20, and I was like, nope.
My
Gave it
God.
right back to Tim, and I was
For
like,
what? Like, there you go, kid. Buy yourself something nice.
that was the total vibe. Oh,
Wow.
and I was like, Tim, take this. Anyway, thanks y'all for having me.
Yeah, no
Of
problem.
course.
Just
Okay.
I'm gonna tuck your video back into the green room, let everything upload, and then we should be
Okay.
good to go.
Sounds
Oh,
good.
what happened there? Why did that happen? There we go. All right, cool. All right. Waiting for Sam and Dave. Sam and Dave. Weird. Okay. There's Sam.
Hello.
Sam, thank you for setting up the live stream this morning before I got in. I appreciate that.
The like scheduling it, you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. No problem.
All right, Fran, if you can hear me, you're good to go, and you can.
And looks like
She left.
gone.
No, that's good. Okay, we're just waiting for Dave Zirin to sign in. I'm gonna fanboy and then I'll leave. It's the adoration is real.
Yeah, love it. Love it.
Yeah. I hope people are watching the live stream right now, just watching it all. Just look at that. Look at that.
There we go.
We're gonna do this. We're gonna do that. And there we are. I'm going to put the thing up so
Greg, you said you're sticking around to listen to Dave, right? I can't hear you, Greg. I don't know if he can hear me either.
I think that was the plan.
Yeah. What's that, Matt?
Hey, okay.
Yeah, you're good.
And do we have Dave's iron?
Not that I can see yet.
I thought we had him.
Where
Greg
you're
had him
supposed
for
to
a
have the
second.
link?
Angela, was Dave's iron on it a second ago?
No, I didn't see him come in yet.
All right.
That's too bad.
Coming in quick here.
Hey, welcome back to Mornings with Pat Kreitlow, all across the Civic Media Radio Network. I'm Matt Rothschild, co-hosting with Angela Lang, as we have been all week. Pat's on vacation, and he'll be back soon. And it's been a pleasure and honor to be able to be with you. And you can join this conversation, 855-752-4842. That's 855-75-CIVIC, as we're broadcasting all across the Civic Media Radio Network. We're trying to get Dave Zirin on the show, and we'll keep trying to get him on. And if he doesn't come on, you can just call us up, and you can get on the show and talk with me and Angela about what's on your mind. Angela, it was great hearing there from Representative Francesca Hong and the amazing work she's doing in the legislature. And it's a different kind of concept of legislating, or of being a legislator, because she has one of being an organizer. And Christian Phelps, who we talked to earlier this week, also had the same conception of their role. They're in the minority. They recognize that they're in the minority. They recognize they can't get some very well-meaning pieces of legislation passed, and yet they're still trying to raise the important issues of the day and represent people and the needs of the people of Wisconsin. So that's what I admire about the work that they're both doing.
I think that came across very clear in Fran's analysis and kind of how she thinks about the work and building the work. And I always tell people, because I'm like, when you do this work a long time, a lot of elected officials. I may not like every single elected official that I know and have a relationship with, but I tell people that it's always very clear, as a dang near lifelong organizer at this point, it's very clear who has like an organizing perspective and an organizing background and view their role through the lens of organizing. And those are the ones that I love dearly and I get along with the most. And it's always very obvious how people show up. And I think one of many things I love about Francesca is that she leads with like such energy and compassion, and you can tell it's palpable, her love for her community, her people, but like all of Wisconsin, and she just wants everyone to thrive, right? She wants everyone to be heard, and her and Christian and other folks, and Darren, and I could name a whole group of folks. That is, I think, very clear through their passion. And, we talked about Congressman Mark Pocan and Senator Tammy Baldwin. Like, this is how we need to continue to show up, especially when people feel frustrated by, politicians. As Fran said, she was like, people have no reason to trust politicians right now. How many elected officials do you hear say that and understand that point? And I think her heart always lies with the people, which is why I think her and some of her colleagues stand out, especially in this particular moment.
And they're not afraid to let people know what their politics are. That's one of the great things about them. They're right up front, for instance, with the Economic Bill of Rights that you was talking about, or the fact that they formed a Democratic Socialist Caucus there. They're not afraid to say, this is what we stand for, this is what our constituents' needs are, and we're going to advocate for those constituents and their needs. You can call us Democratic Socialists if you want. Bernie Sanders has stood by that label his whole career, hasn't heard him one bit. And so you got to admire that. You got to admire the courage of their convictions and the way that they're going about being a representative, even though they're not in the majority. Because, when Representative Hong was running the first time, I asked her once, I think maybe on the Civic Media Radio Network, why in the world are you going to do that? You're going to be banging your head against the wall for you know, every minute you're in that building.
Yep.
But she and Representative Phelps have a different conception, which is so interesting to see in action, isn't it?
I would argue that her colleagues need to take a cue from how these representatives are showing up, their leadership, their compassion. And I'm going to go as far to say, and I don't know if some folks would disagree with me or not, I would also say that there are some Democrats that could take a cue from Reps Phelps and Hong. And those are just two examples that we just had on this week. But I think that there are some other folks in the Dem caucuses that could really take a cue, because I'm seeing this like split, this divide in the Dem party versus, you know, the more moderate type folks and the socialists or progressives. And it's really just about like showing up for people. And I think some folks are frustrated at Democrats because they're not seeing that happen. And so, yes, Republicans can take a cue, but I would also say that even some Democrats in the state, some of her own colleagues, should be taking a cue of how folks are moving and uplifting these issues and centering people right now.
Yeah, and we need our elected officials, our Democrats, to be more outspoken. We saw that with Representative Bocan and Senator Baldwin going after RFK Jr. yesterday, and we played part of that in the first hour, and how refreshing it was to hear our own Congress people really putting it to them. Yeah, we have models. You know, this is what bothers me sometimes when people say all politicians are horrible. I love Representative Francesca Hong. I think she's doing a great job. So when you say all politicians are horrible, what are you really talking about? I love the work that Representative Mark Pocan does. I love his outspokenness, for instance, on the issue of Gaza. He's been one of the most outspoken representatives in Congress on the atrocities that the Israeli government's been doing in Gaza. And so, I don't like those generalizations. And I think they are kind of destructive of of a democratic politics, small d, because once you say, you know, once you agree with the generalization that all politicians are X, I mean, it's going to, you know, there's going to be so much cynicism about politics, period, that we're not going to make the change that we need to. And we do have good representatives here in Wisconsin. And we interviewed two in the past couple days, and we played excerpts from two other good representatives today in Congress. So, yeah, that's just, of course, and as an old editor, I hate generalizations. I hate categorical statements like any statement that starts all things is going to be is almost guaranteed to be a falsehood and easily rebuttable. And so why would you want to say something that is so easily proven to be not true? And so that's just it's kind of a sloppy way to talk or a sloppy way to write that we try to correct as editors or as people who are careful with language. You can join the conversation, 855-752-4842. Tony Zimmerman has joined the conversation through texting saying, did Senator Mark Line have a nanny he didn't like growing up, so now he's gutting childcare for everyone? And he also loved Representative Francesca Hong. She just flat out called Republicans at the State House cowards, Tony Zimmerman says. So you
more
too
of that, please.
Weigh in. Yeah, I like the frankness about that. And yeah, they're cowards because they don't want to buck Speaker Voss, King Voss, as they call him in the Capitol. And in part because of the campaign finance rewrite that they did themselves in 2015 to give people who are in positions of authority in the Capitol to have more and more power from getting money from the super rich and the corporations, and then they can just hold it over people's heads like a sword and make people jump when they say jump.
I mean, it's always been clear that Republicans, don't want to listen to anyone that is outside of their own agenda. And I think Robin Voss is a shining example of that. As we mentioned, right? He's effective in the fact that he's able to unite his party, and anyone that even steps half a centimeter outside of the line, there is talk of a primary challenge or any type of retaliation. And I say that's effective. I don't like it, but it's effective. And it's clear that if there is this level of disregard for the will of the people, and I think we can say this on a broad level, like we need more folks to call it out. I think that's also been a theme today with even Pastor Lanier of like, even interpersonally, those jokes, we can't let slide. Those offensive comments, we can't let slide. Republicans not listening to the will of the people should not also let that slide. And I understand, especially, under, terrible gerrymandered maps, it felt like you were hitting your head against a wall because you're like, I'm organizing, I have more people than they do. But because they, had the maps drawn the way that they didn't need to listen to that. And I think at some point, and we're seeing it now, people are only going to accept, certain things before people start to say, no, this is wrong. And I think folks like Rep Hong being able to bring people together and have people not feel so alone, especially in like rural communities as well, of saying, hey, I hear you. There are some folks in Milwaukee that feel similarly. I think she's trying to bridge these divides and really bring that people power out, because especially in this political landscape, it is very lonely, scary, and isolating if you are the only one challenging the status quo, knowing potentially the consequences of what could happen these days. People get basically kidnapped off the street. But when you're building strength in numbers, and I learned this through union organizing, is that it's a lot harder, right, to retaliate against 30, 40 people all saying the same thing and you're outnumbered. And I feel like that's something that she's also trying to do. And I appreciate her being so candid and honest. And we need more of that so the burden doesn't always constantly fall on her.
I think that's what she was referencing when she said, we've got to do this politics, even though the fascists are at our doors.
Yeah.
And that was kind of a stark way of putting it. And I wanted to ask her a little bit more on that because, that's the situation we're in here in our democracy. We had Jeff Mandel of Law Forward talking about it. You and I have been talking about it all week. I mean, this is the question before us, is our democracy going to survive if Trump keeps going in the direction he's going, which is an authoritarian direction? We talked about it with Jeff Mandel about whether Trump is going to completely ignore U.S. Supreme Court rulings or other federal judge rulings. And he's, to my mind, done it already. And so, we're rapidly going down that hill. And yet you have, Francesca Hong making the point that, we got to stand up and fight against the fascists at our door and work on telling people what a different agenda would be, an agenda that actually would help people in their day-to-day. I'm reminded of the comment that Bill Fletcher Jr. made on our show with us earlier in the week that capitalism has failed people and they're suffering in their day-to-day lives, but rather than having those that economic situation improved, rather than looking at, who is making out like bandits and running our economy that's making you not be able to pay rent or pay your insurance or pay your car insurance or whatever, they're blaming, immigrants. So they're scapegoating again, which is just the traditional authoritarian fascist move. But that's the situation. And that's why Francesca Hong's Economic Bill of Rights is so important, because here's a different way we can solve your problems. Rather than scapegoating, we can actually address your day-to-day concerns so that you're going to be able to have health care, you're going to be able to have child care, you're going to have a decent living wage. And that's what's going to come out of this. Are we going to go in that direction with Francesca Hong and the Economic Bill of Rights? Or are we going to continue to go down this steep hill with Donald Trump and authoritarianism?
Yeah, I mean, and I think, I could just keep really focusing about how, like, the people power, right, in all aspects. What does that look like to come together, to build, to think inward, but, thinking about the hope that Pastor Lanier had kind of left us with is that we've been through things like this before as, communities, it's in our DNA in some ways, even though I maybe personally haven't experienced it before. It's still something that I think is hopeful when we all come together.
And I like what he said, we've been here before with less resources.
Yes.
And we have the ability to organize. We have the ability to communicate. We have the ability to get together and express ourselves in ways that we didn't have before. So that was the great message from Pastor Lanier. And we'll be right back here on Mornings with Pat Kreitlow. I'm Matt Rothschild. She's Angela Lang. We're co-hosting the show.
good? Oh. Dave's here, by the way. Yes. Hi, Dave. Can you hear us?
Yes, loud and clear.
Perfect.
How long do you need me for?
That's a Matt question. I think he had you on the schedule only till 7:30, so unless he wants you to stick around longer, I'm not sure.
No, that's good. That's good. I'm running on fumes.
You what?
I think it's Aaron's Lincoln time.
Oh, gotcha.
Siren's here, huh?
Yes, yes.
Sorry about that. I didn't get that link to you in time.
No, I mean I clicked it the minute after you sent it. I just was unclear.
My mistake.
No mistake.
I wanted to start with Pete Rose, but since we only have half the time, I wondered if we should just go with the fascist stuff.
It's up
What
to
do you
you.
think?
Pete Rose
What do
is
you-
connected. I
What do
wrote
you
an
think,
article
Angela?
about it. It's all connected.
Yeah, I shared it with Angela Lang, my co-host here. I'm just
hello.
wondering.
Hello, good morning.
Oh, nice to meet you.
You too.
I'm happy to talk about Pete Rose, the significance of Trump lobbying for him to be in the Hall of Fame, what we should think about it. Or I'm happy to talk about fascism. Whatever y'all are thinking.
Which way, Angela?
I was gonna say, I think they are connected. I think one flows into the other, honestly.
So we're going to have about 7 minutes.
Whatever you guys need.
We can start with Pete Rose, and you go anywhere you want.
Yeah.
It's up to you guys.
I also
Sounds
just
good.
need to say our producer, Greg Bach, is a huge fan of you and was very excited to know that you were coming on.
Okay.
Wow, that's wonderful. Thanks for sharing that with me. It's sometimes you feel like you're like the tree falling in the woods and nobody's hearing. So nice.
Hey, welcome back to Mornings with Pat Kreitlow, all across the Civic Media Radio Network. I'm Matt Rothschild, co-host with Angela Lang. And as promised, we do have Dave Zirin here as a guest. Dave is the sports columnist for The Progressive in the Nation and runs the podcast Edge of Sports. He is a tremendous political sports columnist, the best in the country. He's been also leading the fight on social media against Trump and fascism, to my mind, really indispensable stuff. Dave Zirin, welcome to the show.
Great to be here. And I come with very happy news. I know these are incredibly difficult times, but I'm going to say something that I know is going to mean a lot to Matt. I don't know. I am going to assume it's going to mean a lot to you, Angela, even though we're new friends. And that's I just finished the first draft of my first non-sports book. And it's my 12th book, and it is a biography of the historian Howard Zinn. It's the first time I've ever stepped outside the sports realm to write a book. And I'm only sharing that with you because I think the politics of Howard Zinn, the author of A People's History of the United States, who passed away in 2010, who Trump does speeches about on the White House lawn as a symbol of everything that's wrong with our education system. And of course, he talks about Howard like he's still alive. The way, remember, he used to talk about Frederick Douglass. He's doing great work. I mean, this is we overestimate this man's intelligence and cunning at times. I'm just going to say that, but it's just to say that I think the kind of political grounded optimism that Howard Zinn represented. He wasn't a pie in the sky guy. He looked at the facts, but his starting point was always not who was in the White House, as he liked to say. It's not who's sitting in the White House; it's who's sitting in. Now, it's not to say that he thought who was in the White House was irrelevant. But his starting point for understanding the world was always struggle, was always how are people organizing themselves and what is the potential of that kind of organization, because he saw gold dust in every march, in every sit-in, in every demonstration. He knew that not everyone would lead to a mass movement, but he also knew that that's how mass movements start. So I just wanted to share that with you all because these are very difficult times. And I'm not saying the good news is that I wrote a book. That would be very sad. But I am saying that there are politics out there that we can turn to, even in the most difficult times, that I do think show a path out of this morass.
Dave Zirin, thanks and congratulations on getting that first draft done. I've written a couple books myself. Books are hard to write. They're long and arduous. And, I like instant gratification. That's why I used to like writing op-eds, which I could do in about an hour and a half. A book is a whole different ball of wax. And Howard Zinn is a really important voice to lift up. Of course, as you mentioned, Trump wants Howard Zinn and a People's History of the United States banned from every college and high school in the country.
The great sin of Howard Zinn, and I say this as someone who's married to a high school history teacher, the great sin of Howard in the eyes of these folks is that young people who are alienated from history, young people who do not like school, young people love Howard Zinn. And you hear this from teacher after teacher, whether they're left wing, right wing. I spoke to right wing teachers who were like, yeah, this is the only thing I can get my kids to read. Because it captures people. And if there's one thing that this government, this regime wants more than anything, it's historical ignorance. And I don't have to preach chapter and verse to your listeners about this, from the books being taken out of the libraries to the attacks on higher education to what is and isn't being allowed to read. You can read books about the Nazi Party in our libraries. You can read Mein Kampf, but don't try to read about Rosa Parks. I mean, it's the educational equivalent of letting all the Afrikaners into the country while you hold off on people who are not, white supremacists. I mean, it's part of an agenda of accepting what in the past we would have found unacceptable and trying to normalize a whole period of history that we thought we had gotten over. And the only way you can really do that is by making people ignorant of the history itself, ignorant of injustice, ignorant that every good thing that we, and by we, I mean working people, black, white, brown, the good things that we have in this country had to be fought for. And that's exactly what they don't want us to know or think about or generalize from. So in that regard, it was an honor to write the book. The hope is that people will read it. I know, big shock, because I do think that there is a politic there that we desperately need right now.
And what Trump is doing with education, I just want to alert the listener that the term you're going to hear is patriotic education. That is the term they use. We need patriotic education. But what they mean by patriotic education is a literal whitewashing of our history. And we can't let them sneak that phrase into the lexicon or down our throats, for that matter, or down our kids' throats in high school and college. We need people to be able to access Howard Zinn and A People's History of the United States and a whole bunch of other, radical pro-democracy literature in history and politics that is out there to be studied and learned from.
Very well put. Absolutely. Malcolm X said that there is no area of study more rewarding or more important than that of history. And when you think of the denigration of history, partly because they don't do it in standardized tests. History is not a part of that, and so some of that is, people have to understand that the teaching to the test mentality in too many public schools really has a nefarious underpinning about issues like IQ and racial bias and, frankly, eugenics are deep. Right. And people, please understand, I'm not a conspiracy theory on this. The creators of the SAT, for example, IQ tests, very influenced by eugenics. So Zinn represents the counter to that. I'll just leave it there.
All right, please hang on after the break. We'd love to have you on for a few more minutes. Dave Zirin is with us on Mornings with Pat Kreitlow on the Civic Media Radio Network. We'll be right back.
So we got a 5-minute break here.
Yeah, we're double booked, but I want to keep Dave on, and because we're supposed to get Nick Ramos on too. Do you see him there yet?
Is he coming in, or is he?
No, he's going by
he
remote.
Just came in now.
Hey, Nick, can we hold you off till? Well, for a few minutes anyway.
Yeah, of course.
Like?
You could just keep me a couple minutes. I don't need much time. I don't want to take time from Nick. This is too important what he's bringing to the table.
Well, Dave, I just want you just to run down Pete Rose in about 5 minutes. Your Pete Rose column, because I think people would want that, and then we'll go to Nick. Okay.
You got it.
I'm just chilling, guys. Good morning, too, by the way.
What do you mean? It's not like it's a busy day for you, Nick.
You got nothing going on, right? Completely nothing.
I flew in from Arizona at midnight. This is just another thing, man.
Were you at a Drake concert?
No, you all shut up.
I had to do it.
Oh my god, I don't want to fight y'all. Yeah, no.
Fight me in person. After this, Darren's picking me up and we're going to Madison. We're trying to beat the storms.
I got a noogie with your name on it. Don't even trip. Look forward to seeing both of you guys there. But yeah, I'm chilling. So you guys just let me know, man. I'm here and just getting my life together.
Hey, Nick, I'm coming tonight. I might have to. I might skip out early. I might skip out after your speech. I hope you won't be insulted.
That's perfect. That's perfect because I'm going to be talking about you in that speech. So
I want to hear your talk.
Yeah,
I don't need to stay for the panel, though. Much as I like the panelists.
Also, logistically, can I just give you my ballot? Because I checked my mail yesterday and I was like, can I just give it to you? Okay, I'll bring it.
Yeah, there's Angela, are you on the board now?
We'll see if I get voted on.
I think
Fingers crossed. I mean, we'll see.
I think there's a very strong odds that you're going to be on.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you're expanding the board. That was a big project of mine, too.
I'm learning from the best, Mr. Rothschild.
Oh, come on now. Flattery will get you everywhere.
That's right. But it's also true.
Couldn't decide what poem to read today, Angela, but I brought two. I think I'm just going to read one.
Yeah.
I'm going to read one on hailstones because it's supposed to hail today.
Hey, I was going to say that's timely. Talking about golf ball size hail. That's wild.
Yeah, when Brittany Merlot said they could be the size of tennis balls, I almost gasped yesterday. Tennis balls can go through my windshield.
Yeah, I was like, thank goodness I have a parking garage.
Sam, I hope we have time for the bird of the day, poem of the day. Worst that happens is we don't, but I'm going to try to sneak it in at the end.
Yeah, I have that pulled. So
That's a beautiful song, that Red Eyed Vireo. So we're going to go to Dave's Iron for about 5 minutes, and then we're going to get Nick in here.
Sounds good. About 30 seconds. Pull him out for just a sec. There we go.
Well, go to the Baptist Church in Milwaukee now with Preacher Lanier.
Yes.
He was great, wasn't he? Loved him.
Yeah. So it was a good show all week. So many great guests.
welcome back to Mornings with Pat Kreitlow. All across the Civic Media Radio Network, I'm Matt Rothschild, joined by Angela Lang. We've been co-hosting all week and enjoying it, more than we should have probably. Phone number 855-752-4842 for your calls or texts. And we have Dave Zirin with us for just a few more minutes. He's the sports columnist at The Nation and The Progressive and runs the podcast Edge of Sports. Dave, you just wrote something for The Nation about Pete Rose. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, Pete Rose, who passed away in August at age 83, has been taken off the Major League Baseball disciplinary list, which sounds a lot like Animal House's double secret probation. And he is now eligible, the all-time hit leader in Major League Baseball history. He is eligible for the Hall of Fame. Now, this is something that I've been writing about for decades because I've been of the belief of, well, of course he belongs in the Hall of Fame. He may be a miscreant. He may have a horrible, revolting personal life, but he may have gambled on baseball. But he is the hit leader. And if we're really going to go over the moral failings of everybody in the Hall of Fame, there are a couple of Ku Klux Klanners you might want to kick out of there too. So that has always been my perspective. But there's such a thing as doing the right thing for the wrong reasons. And let's be clear right now. We have to be clear about this. No matter whether we think Pete Rose in the abstract deserves to be in the Hall of Fame or not, we need to be clear about a couple of things. The first is that Pete Rose primarily is being put in the Hall of Fame after his death because he now serves in death as a symbol for what Major League Baseball wants. And that's the whole-scale takeover of the legal gambling industry of baseball. And anybody who's watched a game knows exactly what I'm talking about. They're in 6 different partnerships with different now legalized gambling corporations. And they see this as their way to replace an aging fan base with young people, because they do have an aging fan base. But instead of trying to figure it out by, say, funding youth baseball programs in our cities, instead, what they're doing is investing time, energy, and funds in building partnerships with these gambling corporations. They want young people to grow up to be bookies, not grow up to be Major League Baseball players. They see the future around this kind of activity. Now, the problem with this is that it is utterly morally bereft. If anybody who's read the study knows, as I have read the studies, is that young people can't handle gambling. Forget about the financial risks. We're talking frontal lobe of the brain. We're talking decision making. We're talking impulse control. The gambling hotlines, since the legalization took place a few years back, and the apps exploded, the gambling hotlines are just exploding with young people who are in desperate straits. And Major League Baseball, that used to be their one ironclad principle: no gambling on the games. So why are they dispensing with this principle? One reason, of course, as I said, is gambling. It's also because Donald Trump lobbied for it. And we need to look at that in this context as well. Because Pete Rose, I'm just going to say it right now, is a sexual criminal. I mean, the evidence of Pete Rose and statutory rape is all over the place. It was something he denied. And let me just tell you, his denial was saying, no, she just turned 16. And that's what I always kept my eye on as to the age of consent in Ohio. So, we're talking about he's making this excuse about relationships when he was in his 30s. So this is not a good person. But guess what? Donald Trump is also an alleged statutory rapist. And there is this thing about Trump, and we've seen this over and over again, where he wants both opponents and fellow Republicans to wallow in his own moral degeneracy. Because what that does is it then makes them complicit in that degeneracy. And then once you're complicit, you have no choice but to defend him and be on his side, because it's about defending yourself. It's an old trick. You know the expression, if you roll around in the mud with the pig, guess what? You're both muddy. And so when you have a situation like Mike Johnson yesterday being asked what he thinks about the Qatari jet, and him saying, "Oh, I'm going to stay in my lane." That was his line. I'm going to stay in my lane and not comment on it. And it's like, hello, the issue of emoluments, forgive my pronunciation, is actually the issue of the Congress. So what he's doing is actually renouncing his oversight over whether or not the president can receive a $400 million jet. I mean, it's from a government that's utterly hostile to democracy and the rights of marginalized people across the board. But they have money. Ooh, do they have money? So this is the problem in which we live, the Pete Rose thing. So now everybody who celebrates Pete Rose and they're doing a celebration in Cincinnati, well, then you become complicit to who this person is. And everybody gets to be a degenerate together, and then nobody has the moral high ground to ever criticize Trump. That's his strategy anyway. A lot of people are pushing back against Rose because of, this is, maybe it is the right thing for him being in the hall. It's utterly for the wrong reasons. And that's the part of it that we actually need to address.
Dave, we're speaking with Dave Zirin. Trump is inuring us to degeneracy, to corruption. I read something earlier this morning on the air from Ruth Ben-Ghiat talking about corruption is a central element of authoritarianism.
Sure.
It's a way to corrupt people into obeying with you, and then just to take the whole thing down with you, and that's what Trump is doing. And so, just briefly, we only have about a minute or two left with you, Dave. Talk about the resistance. You mentioned it briefly. I want you to expand a little on it.
Well, I mean, I can only speak, and I think everybody, frankly, should have this approach, is I can only speak about what's 10 feet in front of my face with authority. And I think if all of us were looking for ways to resist this administration, not by looking at global dynamics, not by looking at the great political fights that are facing this country, but looking at the way those fights, whether it's around Palestine or healthcare or education, is to look 10 feet in front of our face. Try to find who is organizing in our community, in the community where you live, and practice solidarity with those people. It's like, I think it's so easy to be overwhelmed. And of course, we know that that's part of their strategy. You flood the zone with crisis, people don't know where to start. Quick example, I'm talking to my neighbor, and she was out doing an ice watch, trying to see because ICE has been coming into our community. And so she was alerting people, immigrant organizations, when ICE was coming in. She said, "You should come with me." I said, "Oh, but it's the 1-year anniversary since the encampments were violently removed from the universities. So there's going to be a rally about that. So I'm going to that." And she said to me, "Oh, I'm so upset I can't be there. I feel like I'm not doing my part." And I said to her, "You're about to go out and spy on ICE.
Yeah.
You're doing your part." But I think sometimes people can feel that way, that because there's so much, you actually feel inadequate to the tasks. And that's just human. And frankly, it's the best human part of us. And I would just argue that people got to look in front of their face, see what's there, and work on that. And then see what you can work from that. Because otherwise, I fear that we get caught in analysis paralysis.
Dave Zirin, great advice. Thanks for being our guest. We all need to do our part where we are. Do your part where you're at. Join a group that's standing up to Trump's authoritarianism, whether it's attacking immigrants or whether it's education policy, whatever it is, stand up to it. We need everyone to stand up. Dave Zirin, thanks so much, my friend.
Thank you. And just real quick, media blackouts aside, I promise you there is activism happening in your area, because it is happening everywhere right now. You got to find it, because the media, not y'all, but we know what I'm talking about. The corporate media is not going to do that job for you. They're not a movement job placement organization.
Yeah,
that's got to be our job.
Yeah, we try on Civic Media to alert people to protests that are going on in the state right here. So take care, Dave. We'll be in touch.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Great to meet you, Angela.
You too.
Now we're joined by Nick Ramos, who is the executive director at the Wisconsin Democracy Campaign. Full disclosure, I used to have that job. Nick Ramos, thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Good morning to you. It's a great day, man. It's a great day, Angela. How you guys doing?
Best as we can, hanging out, talking to you.
Nick, it's a big day for you in the Wisconsin Democracy Campaign. Let our listeners know.
Yeah.
Well, it's a big day because the Wisconsin Democracy Campaign turns 30 today, which 30 years ago, my God, 1995, what a time to be alive. I mean, we had Mighty Morphin Power Rangers on TV. Anyways, so in all seriousness, gang, I mean, to watch any organization be able to celebrate 10 years, 20 years, 30 years of existence, it really is a testament to the work product, but also the people that believe in the thing. And like in 30 years, we've had 4 executive directors, and it's crazy to think that on this call we have two of them sitting here right now. But we've just been trying to do all the great work in coalition and with the grassroots folks across Wisconsin around money and politics, around trying to end partisan gerrymandering once and for all, to actually have a government that works for the people instead of the most wealthiest amongst us. And so we get to celebrate 30 years of highs, 30 years of lows, but really thinking about how we can celebrate another 30-year birthday and 60 years. And so we're just doing everything we can to show all the love to the supporters, but all the great work that we've been able to do together as one. And so I'm so excited.
And where is the event happening and what time?
So we are going to be at the prestigious East Side Club in Madison. And I say that, sarcastically, but like the East Side Club does have some history and the music there is bumping, and we wanted it to be in a place that felt comfortable, because this is going to be, you see all these galas that happen in the nonprofit world, or like in like the voting rights space, and no shade on any of that stuff, but like galas can feel kind of stuffy type butt. So this is more about like the people's gala. It's about coming as you are. It's about just wanting to be in community with folks. And so we're going to be kicking that puppy off tonight, I believe at 6:00. And so I think we're at capacity, gang, but we're not going to turn away people. If you show up, like, you are more than welcome to be in community with all of us. But it's going to be a happening crowd, and we got some civic media folks. I believe Dan Schaefer is going to be co-hosting. We have Kristen Bry, a staple and just delight to be around here in Wisconsin. And so a lot of fun and a lot of things you haven't seen from this organization.
Yeah, shout out to Dan.
Yeah, it's great that Dan Schaefer is going to be there, and Kristen's a real treat as well.
Mm-hmm.
Angela Lang and I are going to be there.
Oh my God!
It's going to be a fun little party. So that's the Wisconsin Democracy Campaign celebrating 30 years. It's done more than I think any other organization in the state to fight for campaign finance reform and to ban gerrymandering. Nick Ramos, congratulations, and we'll be seeing you later tonight.
I can't wait to see you guys.
Yes, congrats.
We'll be right back on Mornings with Pat Kreitlow. I've got a poem and a bird song for you.
I like the fireworks you had, Nick.
Right?
That was not planned, I promise. I just put my thumbs up and all of a sudden it just goes off. So anyways, you guys need me for anything else?
No, I think you're good to go.
I'll behave. Well, thank you guys for having me on. I'm going to probably take like a 30-minute nap and then pack my stuff because I'm in Milwaukee and drive to Madison. So look forward to seeing you all. Thank you guys so much.
Yes, congrats again.
Yeah,
look forward to
it's going to be fun
celebrating
today.
Oh, we're going to turn up, man. First time we had alcohol at this thing. Anyways.
There you go.
I'll see you guys soon.
Open bar, man.
Yeah, Matt. You might want to stay,
You don't want to see that.
Oh no, I want to see you dance like Elaine in Seinfeld. No lie. Anyways, you guys be good. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, sounds good. Get some rest.
Welcome back to Mornings with Pat Kreitlow across the Civic Media Radio Network. I'm Matt Rothschild. Angela Lang and I have been hosting the Pat Kreitlow Show for the last 4 days, really enjoying the opportunity to do this. I want to thank Pat for allowing us to do it and the other folks at Civic Media having confidence in our ability to carry it off. I hope we've carried it off. It's been quite a week, Angela.
It has, and I'm just so grateful to be able to one, share this experience with you because we always have a good time, but to also be able to have a platform to dig into some of these issues, and just deeply honored for the folks at Civic Media. And I said this to Jane. I was like, it's a big responsibility to feel that you're entrusting us with your show for a few days, and I don't take that lightly. And I think all of the listeners, and looking forward to the next time.
Yeah, likewise. Me too. I want to thank all our guests we've had on this week, but especially the guests today and this packed morning that we had, Pastor Lanier and Jeff Mandel and Representative Francesca Hong and Dave Zirin and Nick Ramos. It was great listening to all of them. They all had great things to offer. Well, I want to thank Greg Bach and Sam Davison, our great producers who've helped us along. And terrific always working with you, Angela. Couldn't do it without you. So every time I get a call, I give you a call. And it's just great fun to be able to work with you. It's kind
Same,
of
likewise.
It seems so easy and natural as a pairing. In the last segment of every show, I tried to bring some beauty through birdsong and poetry. So yesterday I was describing a red-eyed vireo and the hunt I had for it up north in Bark Point one day when I was looking for this bird at the top of the trees that would never move. And finally I found it. It was singing this beautiful song, and Sam's going to play that song for us right now.
That's so cute.
Isn't that great? It just goes on and on too.
I feel like at one point I heard tweet.
Yeah, it's just 30 seconds, and it's one of the most notable songs in the summer, because birds sing in the springtime. They give their spring song for mating purposes and territory purposes, but this bird will sing all summer long. I mean, it's just a crazy thing. And it's a hard bird to see. It's not the most beautiful bird in the whole world, but it's got a really beautiful song. That's the red-eyed vireo. You can see it all over Wisconsin, really. It nests all over the state, but especially up north. So keep your eye out for that. And then as far as poetry, I was thinking of which poem to end with. And then I remembered the conversation we had yesterday with Brittany Merlot, the prize-winning meteorologist of Civic Media, who warns us that there may be hail today. Hail could be the size of a tennis ball even in some places, which is frightening, and it'll do damage to your windshield, do damage to your windows, do damage to your roof. So I stumbled upon a poem called Hailstones by Seamus Heaney, the great Irish poet who died a few years ago, who is famous for the line, once in every lifetime, a tidal wave of justice rises up and hope and history rhyme, which is just a great stanza there. Hope and history rhyme. I want each of us to think of when has hope and history rhymed in our lifetime. Maybe when Nelson Mandela came out of jail. Maybe when Barack Obama was arrested. When Barack Obama became president. Maybe, there was a crazy slip. Maybe when I felt a little bit that way when Tammy won the first time.
Yeah.
These were kind of historical events. But hope and history rhyme. They're not rhyming right now. They're clanging. So, but there are times, and this is, Pastor Lanier reminded us, there are times, when things get better. So here's the first couple stanzas of a poem called Hailstones by Seamus Heaney. My cheek was hit and hit. Sudden hailstones pelted and bounced on the road. When it cleared again, something whipped and knowledgeable had withdrawn and left me there with my chances. I made a small, hard ball of burning water running from my hand, just as I make this now out of the melt of the real thing, smarting into its absence. I just love that. I love Seamus Heaney. And, it raises the question, what are the things that get us through really difficult periods? And for me, it's poetry. For me, it's birds. For me, it's my wife, Jean, and our friends. And for me, it's also participating in protests, like Dave Zirin said. I went to a couple anti-Trump protests, immigrant rights protests. I know there are great protests going on right now in Milwaukee in support of Judge Dugan. He's right. We need to join these efforts wherever we are, or join an effort that your religious group may be doing to help out immigrants in your community, or help out child care centers, for instance. We need to demand of our elected officials that we get the help that we need, but the way we get the help that we need is through collective action, through protest in the streets. That's what Howard Zinn taught us, and Dave Zirin's just coming out with a book on Howard Zinn. Exactly. And I know, Angela, that's what you've been doing as an organizer your whole adult life here. I mean, we really need to do the activism, because it's the activism that's going to save our democracy. Angela, what's your last thought here?
I think, what I'll say too is that, hand in hand with activism is the education. And I think sometimes people are like, I don't know how to get active, or I don't know much about the issue. That's okay. We all didn't come into this movement having the views that we hold now. Everyone starts somewhere. Just take that time to dig deep, to educate yourself, to talk to folks that are directly impacted by these issues and get different perspectives. So I think now is the time for all of us to be a little uncomfortable, to grow and to learn, and then we can show up as well too.
And we can do more education too here on Civic Media, and you can get that and entertainment coming up next with McNair on Air. You got Jane McNair and the great Greg Bach. So stay tuned for that. And thanks again for allowing Angela and me to be with you these last 4 mornings. It's been our pleasure, our privilege.
Thank you.